Hey guys, tonight we drift into a story older than the tallest trees you've ever seen, and deeper than the darkest part of the ocean you'll never willingly swim in. It's a world suspended between sky and water, where the air tastes like storm clouds, and the earth hasn't even been invented yet. You're not going to survive this, by the way, but don't stress it, no one ever does in these stories. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I mean, if you hate ancient creation myths told in a soft voice with an occasional snarky remark, maybe it's not your thing. For those sticking around, drop your location and local time in the comments. Always fun seeing who else is up at some unholy hour chasing folktales. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the shimmering edge of a place called Skyworld. The ground beneath your feet isn't exactly solid, but more like a mist that remembers how to hold you up. Everything here glows, not like neon signs or flickering fireflies, but a cool, endless radiance that makes your skin feel thinner. The grass is soft and blue, the trees stretch far beyond what feels reasonable, and each leaf hums a tune you swear you've forgotten how to hum. This world is clean, not sterile like a hospital, but untouched. There's no death, no war, no bickering over who left the spirit fire burning too long. At least, not yet. You feel the cool breath of Skyworld against your cheeks, and it smells like rain before it falls. And there it is, the great tree. No one remembers when it first appeared. Some say it's always been there. Its roots tangle through the very fabric of this place, thick cords of ancient life weaving through sky soil and water light. The branches cradle stars like nests, and its blossoms glow like tiny moons. It's the kind of thing that makes you forget your own name. In the middle of this serene, flickering world, you notice something weird. A circle of sky people gathered around the great tree, their faces pale with something like fear, a rare thing in a land without danger. They're pointing at its roots. You inch closer. The roots have split, torn open like a wound in the world. And through that impossible gap, you see nothing. Not darkness, not light, just a vast, endless fall, a hole in reality. A hushed debate crackles among the sky people. Some insist it's a test from the spirits that made them. Others call it a curse, a flaw, a crack in perfection. A few, the brave or the foolish, suggest peering in. Guess which one you are. You shuffle forward. The edge hums against your skin, like the memory of thunder. You peer down into the vast, trembling nothing. It isn't black. It isn't white. It's every color you've never imagined, folding and twisting in slow, syrupy spirals. You feel yourself swaying forward. Someone shouts your name. Or maybe it's not your name, but it's meant for you. A hand catches your wrist. The air tightens, thick as river silt, and a voice warns you back. You barely register the words. The pull from the hole is ancient, magnetic, inevitable. Legend says this world was built upon layers of others. An old voice croaks behind you. You glance back at a figure older than mountains, their eyes milky like stormy glass. Each world stacked atop another like shells. That one's the bottomless one. The old sea where none return. Historians still argue whether this ancient concept of layered worlds was a metaphor for moral planes or literal cosmology. Either way, it's a terrible place to drop your keys. You step back, heart hammering. But curiosity is a trickster in its own right. It's probably what got you here in the first place. A fringe tidbit for you. Some lesser-told versions of this story insist the hole beneath the great tree wasn't an accident, but a deliberate wound inflicted by a jealous spirit desperate to end Skyworld's perfection. But nobody likes that spirit much, so those versions don't get many retellings. The sky people start arguing. Some want to seal the hole with earth and sap. Others claim it should be left open, a passage to somewhere, a warning. You lean in, catching scraps of ancient words like feathers in the wind. One elder mutters something about a dream she had, a vision of a world shaped from water and stars, waiting below. And because every good creation myth needs a poor soul to tumble headlong into oblivion, it's you who feels the earth, or sky, or whatever this shimmering world is made of, crumble beneath your toes. You plunge. There's no scream. The air steals it from your throat before you remember how to make sound. Clouds spin by, gray and thick and soft as unwashed wool. Shapes move inside them, things with too many eyes, beasts with no names. For a heartbeat, you glimpse a flock of birds with shimmering bronze feathers, circling your descent like feathered vultures. Though their beaks are kind and their eyes glow with a weird sort of pity, one even offers you a sympathetic shrug. Up above, the hole in Skyworld shrinks, a pale wound in a world already forgetting you existed. And down below, an endless, churning
wind
frothy
howls
blue past your ears, thick and damp, tasting of rain and salt you've never known. Your stomach gives up somewhere around the third cloud, and you float, falling in that odd, slow way where gravity feels less like a force and more like a polite suggestion. You have no sense of up or down now, only endless, tumbling space. Somewhere above, the great tree and its shimmering leaves vanish from sight, swallowed by the rippling clouds. The hole closes behind you like a lid on a jar. One last sliver of light, then nothing but vast, blue-gray nothingness stretching in every direction. It's quieter here than it has any right to be. Except for the wind brushing against your skin and the occasional low groan from the air itself, like an ancient door being nudged open by unseen hands. And then, just as your heartbeat slows, you glimpse it, a shifting, endless sea. It covers everything, reflecting no stars, no moons, only itself. Waves move without cause. No wind stirs them, no tide pulls them. It is water at its purest and most terrifying. Fun fact, many ancient mythologies across the world, from Mesopotamia's Apsu to Norse Ymir's Ginnungagap, imagined a primordial ocean before land existed. Cultures separated by entire oceans themselves somehow arrived at the same idea. Everything begins with water. Historians still argue whether it's coincidence or a relic memory of some ancient shared trauma with the sea. Anyway, back to your plummet. Around you. No clouds now. Only mist so dense it beads on your eyelashes. The light fades. No sun here. No stars. Just that endless surface below. And you're still falling. You start noticing movement on the water's surface. Little ripples. A distant shape bobs along lazily, like a log at first glance. But then it turns, and you see an eye the size of your fist peeking from beneath algae-draped lids. It watches you, expression unreadable, and then another shape. And another. A council of animals has gathered. Not in any orderly fashion, but scattered across the vast waters. Floating logs that blink, turtle shells the size of houses, flocks of birds circling like worried neighbors. Even a curious beaver, who seems disproportionately small for the occasion, paddles into view. You land, well, splash, really, onto a stretch of driftwood lashed together by vines and moss. It dips perilously under your weight before settling. Cold water soaks through your skin instantly. The taste of it clings to your tongue, briny and older than time. The animals approach, their eyes reflecting ghostlight from nowhere. A massive loon circles overhead, calling out in a language you somehow understand in your bones. "What is this thing?" the loon croaks. "Fell from the sky," rumbles a bear, half submerged, her fur slicked down by the water. "Sky things don't belong here," mutters a fox, his tail curled protectively around his paws. The debate begins. You sit, shivering, while creatures of all shapes and sizes float and circle. Some are familiar: otters, muskrats, eagles. Others you can't quite name. One resembles a deer made of mist. Another's a fish with the face of an old man. And a particularly surly snapping turtle seems intent on glaring at everyone. This is where the story shifts. In different tribal tellings, Iroquois, Cherokee, Ojibwe, the details vary. Some claim the council happened in silence, others that the animals spoke as plainly as people. One fringe variant suggests a spirit eel acted as judge, though most versions leave him out because, well, eels are creepy. You watch the animals argue, the sound of their voices blending with the water's restless hush. "We can't let it drown," says the beaver, flicking his tail. "It'll foul the water," grumbles the turtle. "It's helpless," adds a voice like wind over reeds. A graceful heron perched nearby. After a long pause, the council reaches an uneasy agreement. They must build a place for you, something solid to rest upon. But first, they need earth. And earth is nowhere in this boundless water world. The only solution? Someone must dive beneath the endless sea and retrieve a handful of mud from whatever lies at the bottom. A shiver crawls down your spine at the idea. A bottom to this place. You half hoped it was just water forever. Volunteers step or paddle forward. The loon, with its sharp beak and strong wings, dives first. Feathers gleaming, it vanishes beneath the surface, with barely a ripple. You wait. Time stretches. The council murmurs. Some begin to fidget. A fringe fact for you. In certain early tellings, a storm spirit lurks beneath these waters, snatching foolish divers in skeletal hands. Later versions leave him out, probably for the best. Finally, the loon resurfaces, chest heaving, gasping for breath, but its beak is empty. "I could see no bottom," it pants. Others try. The beaver dives next, muscles rippling under his fur. He too vanishes into the dark, and returns, empty. Then the otter, the mink, the heron. Each brave soul disappears into the water's embrace, each returning with nothing. Some shaken, Some pale-eyed. The council grows uneasy. You're getting the distinct impression you were better off falling forever. Then, from the edge of the circle, a small voice pipes up. I'll try. Everyone turns. It's the muskrat. Small. Unassuming. Fur slicked flat, tail thin as a whip. Nobody expected this. He's the runt, the scrapper, the underdog, in every old story. And yet, the council parts for him. Because sometimes desperation is the sharpest weapon a creature's got. You meet the muskrat's eye as he paddles forward. He gives you a little nod. You try to smile, though your lips are numb. With a final flick of his tail, he dives. The surface ripples once, twice, and then the muskrat vanishes. No splash, no fanfare, just a faint swirl in the water, where his small body slipped beneath. The animals watch, their breath misting the air, though you're not entirely sure where the mist is coming from in this world without proper weather. The minutes stretch. The water grows eerily still, like a pond holding its breath. Somewhere, a loon lets out a low, mournful call, the kind of sound that feels like a question you're not supposed to answer. A fact for you to chew on while we wait. Many cultures, not just the Iroquois and Ojibwe, assign near-heroic qualities to small, underestimated animals. Think of Anansi the spider, Brer Rabbit, even old Greek Aesop's mouse that saved the lion. Historians still argue whether these stories were just entertainment, or sly lessons in power and survival strategies for common folk. Either way, it's always the little guy. Time keeps stretching. The great snapping turtle huffs, sending ripples toward you, he grumbles. He's gone, mutters the fox, avoiding your gaze. But you feel something. A pull, a tightening in your chest, like a thread tied around your heart, tugged gently by unseen fingers. The kind of instinct that whispers, wait, just wait. And then, a tiny bubble breaks the surface. Another. And with a final burst of churning water, the muskrat resurfaces. His fur clings to his trembling body, and his eyes flutter half shut. But in his small, curled paws, clutched tight against his chest, is a clump of dark, muddy earth. It's barely enough to fill a closed fist. Wet, crumbling, but unmistakably solid. The animals let out a collective sound, half cheer, half gasp. The beaver splashes his broad tail, sending waves tumbling over your feet. The loon flaps its wings in slow, majestic circles. Even the sour old turtle raises his brow ridge, an expression you'll generously call mildly impressed. The muskrat, though, doesn't look triumphant. He looks exhausted. His breath comes in shallow pants, his tiny body quivering. There's a moment where you wonder if he'll survive, but the great heron lowers her head, murmurs a blessing in a tongue you don't recognize, and the muskrat seems to settle, still clinging to the mud. The great snapping turtle paddles forward. His shell is enormous, covered in algae and tiny barnacle-like things that glow faintly. He turns one wise, ancient eye on you. We will need a place to put this, he rumbles, voice like shifting stone. And just like that, the plan forms. Turtle volunteers his back. He offers it not out of nobility, don't kid yourself, but practicality. He's big, he's steady, and let's be honest, not much else is happening in his social calendar. The council murmurs agreement. A sacred pact forms in the space between their breath and the still, now this is where a neat historical nugget comes in. The image of a world on the back of a turtle isn't unique to North American tribes. You'll find similar myths in Hindu cosmology and Chinese folktales. Historians still argue whether it's cultural diffusion or one of those odd cases where humanity's collective subconscious just really likes turtles. The animals gather around as the muskrat, still quivering, carefully passes the precious clump of earth to the beaver. From the beaver to the loon, from the loon to the snapping turtle, who opens a leathery paw. He places the earth upon his broad, barnacle-dotted shell. A hush falls over the council. And then something remarkable happens. Mud, dark and damp, begins to spread, slowly at first. A ripple around its edges, like cream in coffee. The water around it shivers. Little tendrils of silt and stone stretch outwards, thickening, growing. You feel it through the soles of your feet as the driftwood shifts, roots tangling into the new forming soil. The beaver, ever the builder, darts to and fro, patting down wet clumps. The loon fans its wings, blowing stray bits of floating moss into place. The heron delicately arranges reeds along the growing shore. It's hypnotic to watch. Quirky tidbit time. In one fringe telling of this myth, the first bit of land included a tiny hill made entirely of mussel shells. Supposedly, if you find a white mussel shell on the shore of a lake, it's a leftover from that original patch of earth. You'll never look at a freshwater clam the same way again. The earth forms a broad, damp stretch of land upon the turtle's back. Hills rise like the muscles of his shell. Little pools form, reflecting the misty sky above. Reeds sway in a wind you hadn't noticed before. The other animals climb onto the growing land, The fox shakes water from his fur. The beaver immediately begins gathering twigs because, well, instincts. The loon preens its feathers, already claiming a small, rippling pond. And you're left standing in the middle of this new, improbable place, dripping wet and speechless. The muskrat, exhausted but alive, crawls up beside you. He looks around, his whiskers twitching, and lets out a soft, satisfied sigh. "I told you," he mutters, mostly to himself. The council murmurs again, not words this time, but content sounds, the low, satisfied grunts, chirps, and croaks of creatures who've cheated the void. And somewhere deep within yourself you realize the world has begun. The land continues to grow. It stretches in uneven, lumpy patches, like dough spreading under a baker's palm. You watch as tufts of grass sprout from the damp earth, thin and wiry at first, then lush and soft. Small flowers appear, their pale petals curling toward a lightless sky as if remembering what sunlight used to be. The snapping turtle's great, mossy back shifts beneath it all, but he carries the weight without complaint. Or at least, without vocalizing it, though you catch him shooting a long-suffering look toward a particularly enthusiastic beaver piling stones in one corner. The council of animals moves about, each creature finding its place. The loon claims a shallow pond near the edge, heron builds a nest in a freshly sprouted tree, and the fox circles a grove of bushes already heavy with dark berries. You wander through it all, your feet sinking slightly in the soft earth, and you realize something strange. The land keeps stretching just a little ahead of you, as if making room for each step. It's oddly polite for newly minted soil. Fun historical fact to sprinkle in here. In Iroquois oral tradition, the earth on Turtle's back wasn't instantly the wide world we know now. It grew slowly, expanding as needed, shaped by the creatures who settled it. Historians still argue whether this was an early way to explain tectonic shifts, though admittedly, ancient folks didn't use phrases like continental drift. The muskrat walks beside you, moving with the stiff-legged shuffle of someone who just won a battle but isn't sure if anyone noticed. His fur is still slick to his narrow body, but his whiskers twitch with quiet pride. "You see," he says, voice rough as cattails in the wind. "Didn't need the big wings or long teeth. Just a good lungful of air and stubbornness." You grin at him, and a complete disregard for personal safety. He snickers, a sharp little sound, and for a moment, the weight of this strange, mist-soaked place eases. And then you hear it. A sound. Faint at first. A low, distant hum that seems to come from beneath the earth itself. It pulses through the soles of your feet, through the new trees, through the shallow ponds and rising hills. The council of animals falls silent. Heads turn, ears flick. The beaver freezes mid-branch placement. Even the grumpy turtle stills. "It's coming," murmurs the heron, her long neck arching as she scans the hazy horizon. "What is?" you ask, though part of you already knows. This world wasn't made for one creature. Balance is everything. Always has been, always will be. And now that land exists, something ancient stirs in response. The hum deepens, vibrating through your ribs. The freshly sprouted trees sway, as though caught in a breeze you can't feel. Little ripples chase across the ponds. A mainstream fact for you. In most native North American creation myths, balance between realms is a recurring theme. Sky and earth, water and land, life and death. Historians still argue whether these dualities were reflective of natural cycles or metaphors for tribal politics. Probably both. The snapping turtle's voice rumbles from the center of the gathering. "We made a place for the Sky Woman," he says. "But now the world must choose what shape it takes. And before you can ask what that means, the earth moves, not violently. There's no cracking or tearing. It's more like a long, deep breath. Hills rise a little higher. The shallow ponds widen. Reeds part in neat lines. And from the very heart of this place, a small mound begins to form. At first, it's just a lump of earth. But as it grows, it takes on a definite shape. Long, winding, narrowing at one end, broad and rounded at the other. It resembles the stretched body of a creature in sleep. The muskrat's nose twitches. "A serpent," he mutters. The other animals shift uneasily. The beaver grunts. The fox curls his tail around himself. Only the heron seems calm, though her feathers fluff ever so slightly. The mound continues to swell until it resembles a colossal sleeping snake. Grass and moss grow across its back. Tiny wildflowers bloom in patterns along its sides. And then, two pits open where eyes might be. Dark, yawning, ancient. You swallow. Quirky tidbit. Hard. Some lesser-known tellings of this myth feature a giant serpent spirit named Angaunt, who sleeps beneath the earth and occasionally stirs, causing earthquakes. In later versions, he's blamed for seasonal storms and strange animal migrations. Like the weather app of the Mythic Age, but moodier. The humming stops. A voice rises, not from the serpent-shaped mound, but from the earth itself. Sky Woman. You turn. From the mists beyond the council, a figure approaches. You recognize her instantly, the woman from the great tree, from the fall, from your half-forgotten world above. Her feet barely touch the ground. Her hair flows like ink in water, dark and endless. Where she steps, flowers bloom. The animals part for her. Even the turtle bows his thick head. She stands before you, eyes reflecting both the old world and this new one, in their depths. "Thank you," she says softly, "for bringing me here." You feel a strange warmth in your chest, an impossible thing in this cool,
"I didn't do
world.
much,"
You manage. She smiles, and it's like dawn breaking over water. "You waited," she says. "That's everything." The council gathers around her. The snapping turtle rumbles an old, ceremonial welcome. The loon croons a soft greeting. The muskrat, looking impossibly pleased with himself, puffs out his chest. And then, as the council settles, Sky Woman turns to the serpent mound. "It's time," she murmurs. "Time for what?" You wonder, but the answer's already rising beneath your feet. The earth beneath you hums again, but this time it's different, deeper, more alive. It's less like a sound and more like a heartbeat, one you feel in your teeth, your fingertips, the soles of your feet. The newly sprouted trees sway, though the air remains completely still. A ripple moves across the shallow pond where the loon drifts, circles tightening. Sky Woman steps closer to the serpent-shaped mound. She kneels, pressing one palm to the dark, damp earth. For a moment, everything holds its breath. Even you, though you didn't mean to. And then, it stirs. The serpent-shaped rise shifts, the thick earth along its spine crumbling slightly, the moss-covered back flexing in a slow, ancient movement. Two dim hollows, like sunken eyes, open wider. Not hostile, not exactly awake, but aware. You want to step back, but your feet won't move. A good historical fact here. In various Iroquois and Ojibwe traditions, creatures of earth and water often served as guardians of thresholds between water and land, earth and sky, life and death. This serpent, or something like it, appears in different names and forms throughout native stories. Historians still argue whether these beings represented real-world predators, like giant snakes or sturgeons, or purely spiritual forces made to explain the earth's moods. The muskrat sidles up next to you, his fur now mostly dry, though still spiky in places. "This part's always a little strange," he whispers, eyes narrowing. "Stranger than falling through a hole in the sky?" He grins. You ask. "Oh, much." Sky Woman hums a low melody, a sound like the wind through pine needles or the hush of falling snow. The serpent stirs again, and the earth ripples outward from its body. A fringe tidbit for your sleepless brain. Some fringe scholars claim that turtleback earth myths, especially those involving great snakes or sea monsters, are remnants of prehistoric human memory. Think ancient people witnessing the last of the Ice Age megafauna, mammoth bones, huge reptiles, and passing down distorted versions in oral tradition. You're standing in the middle of what might be a fossilized fear. The earth continues to rise and reshape. Around the serpent's form, small hills appear. Streams carve themselves into existence. Trees rise taller. The ground thickens and settles into something sturdier, less waterlogged. The council of animals watches in reverent silence. The beaver, tail slapping gently against a log, murmurs. The land takes its shape now, and you realize the world is deciding what it wants to be. Not dictated by some divine blueprint, not crafted like a machine, but growing, adapting, moving in response to life. Sky Woman stands, the earth softening under her feet. She gestures to you, beckoning. Tentatively you step forward. The earth seems to rise to meet you. She takes your hand, hers warm, firm, and places it on the serpent's mossy back. The sensation is immediate, or scaly like you half expected, but ancient. A feeling of vastness. The weight of oceans, the hush of glaciers, the slow pulse of molten stone. The serpent's body hums beneath your palm, and in that moment, you understand something without words. It's not a beast, not a monster, not even a protector. It's the shape of something old. A memory of Earth itself. You look to Sky Woman. She nods. "The land remembers its shape," she says softly. "We help it remember." The other animals gather around. The muskrat curls up at your feet. The heron folds her wings. The fox sits back on his haunches, ears flicking. And together, you watch as the land grows. Grass thickens. Trees reach higher. New streams cut through the hills, carrying fresh water into small, clear ponds. Flowers bloom in wide, bright swaths. The mist thins, revealing a sky painted with colors you don't have names for. It's beautiful in a way you didn't expect, not perfect or polished, a little lumpy in places, a bit wild. but alive. The serpent mound settles again, the faint glow in its hollow eyes dimming. Not gone, you ask, but resting quietly. Is it safe now? The muskrat chuckles. For a while, a scholarly debate lingers in the back of your mind. There's been long discussion over whether these stories of world-making are meant as one-time creation myths or continuous processes. Some elders teach that the world is constantly being created, reshaped by each generation's choices. Historians still argue whether that was metaphor or literal belief. Sky Woman turns to you. Now there's one thing left. A sharp breeze stirs the grass, carrying the scent of fresh earth and water. Seeds, she says. From the folds of her robe, she scatters handfuls of tiny glinting seeds. Some glimmer silver, some black as obsidian. They land on the damp soil and immediately sprout. Stalks of corn, beans curling up young saplings, wide-leafed squash. You realize, with a small jolt, you're watching the birth of agriculture. Another fact for you. The Iroquois famously cultivated the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, grown together in a symbiotic trio. Corn provides a stalk for beans to climb, beans fix nitrogen in the soil, and squash's broad leaves shade out weeds. Long before Europeans showed up with their plows, this was sophisticated, sustainable farming. The council murmurs in satisfaction. The loon dips her head, the fox nibbles a tender green shoot. Sky Woman steps back, looking out over the patchwork world you've helped stitch together. And for the first time since you arrived, the mist fully parts, revealing the sky. It's not the endless void you expected, but a deep, rich expanse filled with strange constellations, clusters of stars in shapes both familiar and foreign. You sense, rather than hear, a voice carried on the wind. Not Sky Woman's, not the council's. A promise. It is begun. The newly cleared sky stretches overhead, vast and endless. A shade of indigo so deep, it seems to drink in every thought you've ever had. Stars prick the darkness like cold needles, forming constellations you don't quite recognize. Some look almost familiar. A curve of light like a fishhook, a crooked ladder, something vaguely bird-shaped, but nothing you can name. Sky Woman gazes upward, her face calm but intent, as though she's searching for something not yet there. The Council of Animals mills about, uneasy now that the work of creation has quieted. The muskrat scratches at his ear and mutters, "I hate this part." Too quiet. You open your mouth to ask what he means, but a low rumble cuts you off. Not from the earth this time, from above. A deep, rolling growl of sound, like boulders grinding together inside a cave the size of a world. The stars begin to shift. They don't move like stars should, slowly over months or seasons. These slide and ripple, bunching together like schools of fish, forming new patterns with impossible speed. The crooked ladder dissolves, replaced by a wide, gaping spiral. A historical fact for your nighttime trivia stash. Many Native American cultures didn't view constellations as fixed. Stars were seen as active, alive, sometimes even mischievous. In Iroquois tradition, certain stars carried the spirits of great ancestors, while others signaled omens. Historians still argue whether the ancient petroglyphs found in New York and Ontario depict constellations or ritual maps. The muskrat tugs on your sleeve. "Here they come," he murmurs. You squint upward, and from the shifting spiral of stars, shapes descend. Not spirits, not animals, but something in between. Wisps of light with faces you almost recognize, blurring and reforming as they move. Sky Woman steps forward, arms outstretched. "They come to finish the world," she says softly. "And now you see it. The beings of air, wind, and storm, slipping down from the sky like threads of smoke. Some land in the trees which shiver under their weightless touch. Others spiral into the streams, sending up glimmering sprays. A quirky tidbit for you. Some fringe storytellers claim that ancient sky spirits could take whatever form they chose, often appearing as strange weather patterns or even rare animal sightings. There are accounts of lightning that spoke in human voices or storms that smelled of fresh-cut cedar. Makes you wonder what your own forecast's been hiding. The largest of the sky beings hovers over the serpent-shaped mound, shimmering in and out of form. Now a hawk, now a rolling storm cloud, now a tall, antlered figure with burning eyes. It speaks without sound, a pulse you feel behind your sternum. This world is new. It must be balanced. Sky Woman nods and gestures to the council. The snapping turtle grumbles assent. The loon lets out a long, warbling note. And you wish you'd brought a flashlight. The sky beings move across the land, planting unseen things in the soil. Not seeds, exactly. More like ideas. Where they pass, flowers change color, rocks gleam with a faint inner glow. Trees bend toward invisible currents. The muskrat shivers. This part always makes my fur stand up. The largest spirit speaks again. Some things will walk in light. Some things will crawl in dark. Both will belong. A scholarly debate point for you. Early anthropologists argued about whether these mythic divisions, light versus dark, above versus below, reflected moral judgments or just natural balance. Some elders insist both forces are necessary, that darkness isn't evil, but simply different. Historians still argue whether these ideas shaped later governance systems among the Iroquois Confederacy, famous for its focus on unity through difference. The serpent mound stirs again, not in threat, more like a sigh. The earth hums a final time, then settles. Sky Woman glances at you. Now we give it a name, she says. The animals gather close. The muskrat, clearly having done this before, closes his eyes in dramatic concentration. Names tumble through the air, spoken by claw and beak and paw. Names in languages older than stone. Names with meanings you can almost grasp. Soft earth above waters. Shellback home. Breathland, place of falling stars. Sky Woman turns to you, she says. What would you call it? The question catches you off guard. You look around at the mist-thinned landscape, the crooked trees, the endless sky. It isn't like the world you knew. It isn't perfect, but it's alive. You take a breath, tasting soil and wildflowers, and the sharpness of new air. I'd call it home, you say quietly. The muskrat grins. Good choice. And then, somewhere in the distance, a strange new sound rises. A high, keening note like a distant flute, or a bird you've never heard before. Sky Woman's face turns toward it, and she smiles. The first voices, she murmurs. And you realize, life is arriving. Not just animals, people, spirits, stories. This place, still so new it barely has a name, is already filling with what it was made for. You feel the land settle beneath your feet, no longer shifting but solid, steady. The sky beings rise, their work done, dissolving back into the stars, leaving only a faint shimmer in their wake. The world is ready, and somehow, so are you. A hush spreads through the clearing, as though the very air is pausing to listen. That high, strange note, half birdsong, half flute, lingers in the air, weaving between the young trees and curling over the dark water. The council of animals lifts their heads, their eyes bright in the new dusk, and one by one, they turn toward the horizon. You follow their gaze. Across the far side of the land, something stirs in the distance. Not a figure you can see clearly, not yet, more like a ripple through the mist, a shifting in the pattern of the trees. You squint, but the shapes refuse to settle, darting in and out of sight like dancers in thick fog. The muskrat tugs on your sleeve. Those are the first ones, he says, his voice soft now, as though anything louder might spook them. The ones who'll live here. The people. A historical note worth tucking away. According to several Iroquois and Ojibwe oral traditions, the first people were not created out of nothing, nor sculpted from clay like in some other world myths. They arrived, stepping into a world already in motion, already breathing. Historians still argue whether this reflects a belief in migrations from distant lands, or a metaphor for consciousness emerging within the world itself. The shapes move closer, not walking, exactly, more like arriving. Each figure seems to step from a slightly different patch of mist, as if crossing invisible thresholds. A tall figure with hair like storm clouds. A woman whose skin gleams like sun-warmed stone. A child with eyes, reflecting entire constellations. And others, too many, too varied to count. Sky Woman watches them, a bittersweet expression tugging at her mouth. These are the caretakers, she murmurs. This world needs watchers. Story keepers. A fringe tidbit for you. In some older, lesser-known versions of the Earth Diver stories, it's hinted that the first people might have come from the sky, much like Sky Woman herself. Not gods, not spirits, but cousins of the stars, tasked with tending the Earth's memory. Some claim certain ancient petroglyphs in the northeast depict these first arrivals, their hands raised in greeting to the constellations they left behind. The figures move into the clearing, silent as mist. The council of animals doesn't flinch. The muskrat even waves a paw in greeting. And then, not through the air this time, but through you, a pull in your stomach, a warmth behind your ribs. The world seems to tilt, not unpleasantly, and you realize, this place is reshaping itself again. But now it's doing it around the people. Grass flattens where they step, water flows toward them. Trees lean in as though eager to eavesdrop. One of them, the child with constellation eyes, stops in front of you. You expect something profound, a riddle, or ancient wisdom. But instead she grins and says, "Do you know any games?" The muskrat snorts. Told you. They're like that. Sky Woman kneels beside the child, brushing a hand over her wild hair. The world's old enough for play, she says gently. That's how it remembers to stay young. The others gather near the serpent-shaped mound. One of them, a tall man with branches twined in his hair, runs his hands over the mossy surface. "We'll tend it," he promises, voice low and steady. A scholarly debate for you to chew on later. Anthropologists have long wondered whether these origin myths were meant as literal histories or as ceremonial metaphors for the responsibilities of living in harmony with nature. The Iroquois Confederacy, known for its sophisticated political systems and land stewardship, may have drawn these principles directly from such stories. Historians still argue whether these myths subtly encoded early forms of environmental law. The people began unpacking objects from the folds of their clothes: small woven baskets, flint tools, bundles of seed. The woman with sun-warmed skin crouches at the edge of a stream and releases a handful of pebbles. Each one hits the water with a note, like a tiny bell. The stream changes course, curving closer to a patch of sunlit earth. "See?" she says to no one in particular. It listens. Sky Woman smiles. "It always did." The child tugs your hand. "Come help me find a turtle," she says. "I'm going to tell it a secret." You glance at the muskrat, who shrugs. "Go ahead. Secrets are how this place grows." And so you follow her, feeling the land's softness under your feet, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and new leaves. Every so often, a sky being flickers at the edge of your vision, watching, but no longer interfering. The child kneels by a rock and, sure enough, there's a small turtle, no bigger than a river stone. Its shell gleams like wet slate, tiny eyes peering out from under a fringe of moss. The girl leans close and whispers something you can't catch. The turtle blinks slowly, then inches into the water, carrying the secret downstream. You ask her, "What did you tell him?" "That we're going to make the best stories." And somehow, you believe her. Above you, the stars shift one last time. Not in warning, not in threat, in approval. The world feels ready now. A place with animals and skywalkers and laughing children and secrets carried by turtles. A place that remembers. Sky Woman calls out, her voice ringing clear through the night. It has begun, and you realize this isn't the end of the story. Not even close. It's only the beginning. You wake, or maybe you never quite slept, in the soft hush of the new world's first dawn. The sky's no longer a star-pricked void, but a gentle wash of pale rose and lavender, with streaks of gold like someone dragged a paint-soaked branch through it. Dew clings to the grass, and the air smells like wild mint, damp bark, and something sweeter you can't name. The muskrat is sprawled belly up in a patch of clover, snoring faintly. Nearby, the snapping turtle is half submerged in a pool, eyes just above the surface, watching the ripples like a stone pretending not to notice. The people sleep in scattered clusters, heads pillowed against logs or bundles of grass, their faces peaceful. Sky Woman is the only one awake, standing at the edge of the serpent-shaped mound. She's gazing at the horizon, where the mist curls away from the trees like smoke. When she senses you, she smiles without turning. "Now the world begins to teach itself," she murmurs. "A historical fact for you. In many Iroquois and Cherokee tellings of the Earth Diver story, creation is ongoing. The world wasn't made once, and left to run its course. It's a continuous act, shaped by each being that moves through it. Every footprint, every word, every choice, adds to the unfinished story." Historians still argue whether this worldview influenced the famously flexible, consensus-driven governance structures of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which allowed for constant revision and adaptation. You join her, standing barefoot in the dewy grass. The land feels more alive than it did before, humming faintly under your feet like a slow heartbeat. Far off, a figure moves through the trees, a tall, antlered being, its silhouette shifting between animal and person. One of the sky spirits who stayed behind. You watch it, wondering what business it still has here. Sky Woman follows your gaze. Some spirits choose to stay. The world isn't finished with them yet. A quirky tidbit for your collection. Certain fringe folklorists claim that the horned spirits of early American legends may have their roots in ancient sky beings from Earth Diver myths. From the enigmatic Piasa bird to early accounts of antlered men in Appalachian ghost stories, echoes of these ancient watchers linger in regional tales. The child with star eyes appears, carrying a bundle of wildflowers. She holds them out to you. "For the stories you'll carry," she says solemnly, as though entrusting you with a sacred charge. You take them, and they're warm in your hands, like they've just been plucked from sunlight. "Will you stay with us?" she asks. Before you can answer, a shimmer ripples through the clearing. The people wake at once, sitting up, eyes bright and alert. The council of animals gathers too. The muskrat groggy but cheerful, the turtle steady as stone, the loon letting out a low, laughing cry. It's time for the naming. Sky Woman steps forward. "Each thing in this world has a voice," she says, "and each voice must be heard. We'll give names now, but no name is fixed. Everything is allowed to change." A scholarly debate point here. Some anthropologists argue that this emphasis on renaming and fluid identities among natural things hints at ancient animistic practices, where not just animals and people, but rivers, stones, and clouds were considered living, speaking presences. Others contend it's a poetic metaphor for the way oral traditions evolve. Historians still argue whether early language systems among the Iroquois and Algonquin-speaking peoples encoded this flexibility in their very structure. The naming begins. The snapping turtle is called Old Shell, though the muskrat insists on adding grumpy to the front of it, earning a glare. The loon's name comes out in a long, undulating sound no one else can pronounce, so they shorten it to asterisk echo feather. The muskrat announces his own name proudly as Swift Paddle, though you'd swear you saw him trip over a root an hour ago. One by one, the animals, plants, and even stones receive names, each one feeling less like an assignment and more like an introduction. Sky Woman names the wind Song Without Strings, and the water Sleepless Mirror. The stars are asterisk the Forgetful Watchers, and the land itself is called Breath of the Skyfall, in honor of the moment she arrived. The child tugs your hand. What about you? She asks. You realize you've no idea what your name should be in a world like this, where words carry weight and everything remembers. The muskrat suggests mud-foot. The loon offers soft stumble. The snapping turtle recommends doesn't listen, which frankly feels a little uncalled for. Sky Woman smiles. You'll find your name, or it'll find you. A breeze stirs the grass, carrying with it the faint scent of sun-warmed stone and something wilder. In the distance, that antlered spirit moves again, pausing to watch, then fading back into the trees. And just like that, the first day of the world stretches ahead, wide and unclaimed, filled with things unnamed and stories unspoken. You sense, more than see, the invisible threads tying each thing here together, from the tiniest pebble to the tallest tree to the quiet watching stars. It's a living tapestry. The council of animals disperses, heading off toward streams and dens and nests. The people begin weaving shelters from willow branches, mapping the land with stones and threads of grass. The world settles into itself, no longer a chaotic newborn, but not yet old. Sky Woman rests her hand on your shoulder. Come, she says. There's something you need to see. And you follow, feeling the world shift and breathe around you. You tread carefully through the dawn-wet grass, the world's colors still half-dreamed, as Sky Woman guides you beyond the serpent mound and into a stretch of birch trees. Their white, papery bark gleams like bone in the early light, and each tree leans just slightly toward the east, as if anticipating something you haven't caught sight of yet. The earth is soft here, and with each step, you feel it give a little under your feet. Not quicksand, not swamp, more like a place still remembering how solid it's supposed to be. Sky Woman gestures to a shallow hollow filled with fog, and you peer down. At first, it seems empty. Then shapes begin to shift in the mist. Faces, eyes, some human, some animal, some neither. They hover, unformed, flickering like candle flames in a draft. This, Sky Woman murmurs, is where the lost things go. The names that didn't take, the stories that forgot their endings. A historical note you should tuck away for later. Several Iroquois and Cherokee traditions include places like this in their cosmologies, in between realms, neither part of the earth nor the sky, where unfinished things linger. Some historians still argue whether these concepts represent a proto-underworld belief or an abstract metaphor for memory and forgotten history. No one agrees on the exact function, though each telling leaves a clear warning. Don't linger too long where the lost things dwell. You ask what the figures are waiting for. For someone to remember them, Sky Woman says quietly, or give them a new name. A breeze stirs the mist, and one of the shapes edges closer. A deer-like face with too many eyes and antlers that fork into curling, vine-like shapes. It feels like a question more than a threat. The muskrat, who's followed you despite claiming to be exhausted, peers over your shoulder. That's almost was, he whispers. He nearly got to be part of the world, but forgot how to finish being born. A fringe tidbit for your collection. In some regional earth-diver myths, the world is populated by creatures that almost existed, beings made of wind and suggestion, left behind as the land solidified. Folktales in parts of upstate New York and southern Ontario still tell of night wanderers seeing pale shapes on foggy nights and claiming them as, quote, the almost born. Sky Woman cups her hands and sings a note so low it feels more like a vibration than a sound. The mist shivers, and several of the figures scatter into nothingness. But one, a small weasel-shaped creature with a crown of moss, lingers. You meet its gaze. It feels like looking at a half-forgotten childhood dream. You could name it, Sky Woman suggests. You hesitate, then murmur. The creature brightens, song, if such a thing is possible for a thing half made of mist, and darts into the trees. The world feels subtly more complete, as though something important, once misplaced, has slipped quietly into its rightful place. Sky Woman nods approvingly. Good. It's easier than you think, becoming part of a place. Most people forget how. A scholarly debate point for you. Anthropologists have often debated whether these creation stories are prescriptive or descriptive, meant to explain how the world came to be, or to teach listeners how to behave within it. The recurring act of naming, claiming, and weaving the incomplete into the whole suggests a worldview where participation is not optional but essential. Historians still argue whether early communal rituals reflected this same ideology. The child with star eyes appears at your side again, carrying a bundle of sticks. "We're building houses," she announces. "Want to help?" The muskrat groans. If it's anything like last time, it'll collapse in 10 minutes. Undeterred, the child tugs your hand. You follow her into a clearing where the people have gathered, using saplings bent into arcs and lashed together with vines. The structures are humble, rounded, leaf-covered shelters like miniature green hills. One family works together laying moss over the top. Another carves tiny patterns into stones to mark their new home's boundary. A loon calls overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf's howl curls into the pale sky, feeling the roughness under your fingertips, and help weave them into the frame of a shelter. The people sing softly as they work, not words, just long, rising and falling notes that keep time with the motions of their hands. It's a strange thing. You feel the world thickening with every branch you lay, as though the air itself grows denser, more tangible. The stories told here, the names spoken aloud, the missed things drawn into memory, they're shaping the rules of this place. And you realize, nothing here is set in stone. Not yet. Every creature, every leaf, every breath, holds the power to tilt the story one way or another. When the shelter stands finished, uneven but sturdy, Sky Woman smiles. "Now," she says, "you've built something that remembers you." A breeze stirs the branches, carrying a note of approval. The muskrat scampers inside. Not bad. Dry, too. The people gather to eat, not from fields or game yet, but from what the earth offers. Berries, roots, handfuls of cool, clean water cupped in hollowed stones. The first day of the world winds toward its close, the sun a pale copper disk, sinking through the trees. You sit in the clearing, the scent of wood and fresh leaves in the air, the laughter of children, and the occasional grumble of animals mixing with birdsong. And for the first time, you realize you don't want to leave. The stars are beginning to wake again. The sky purples as evening settles in, and somewhere out beyond the trees, a single loon gives a lonely, rising cry. It feels like a sound made to mark moments just like this one, when day tips, reluctantly, into night, and the world draws a breath before remembering it has to sleep. You find yourself beside a small stream, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple of a fish rising for a bug or a leaf drifting downstream. The water is so clear you can see smooth stones beneath it, some the color of old bones, others shimmering like bits of glass. A few are shaped like faces, though you can't decide if that's the way the stones formed, or if the water just wants you to believe it. Sky Woman crouches beside you, dipping her fingers in. "Before the world was made solid," she murmurs, "the rivers dreamed their own paths. Now they learn to follow them." A historical fact for your mental shelves. In many Native American origin myths, rivers aren't just passive features of the land. They're purposeful, ancient beings with will and memory. Among the Ojibwe and Cree, rivers often appear as characters capable of emotion and revenge. Historians still argue whether these anthropomorphic portrayals reflect survival teachings, warning against underestimating nature, or deeper spiritual beliefs about the animacy of the world. You trail your hand in the water, feeling it pull insistently toward some unseen place. It's not forceful, but it reminds you of a child dragging a parent by the hand. There's somewhere it wants to go. On impulse, you follow. The muskrat, still chewing on something that looks suspiciously like a snail, grunts. "Where do you think you're going now?" "Somewhere," you say, because what else can you say in a place where even the water has intentions? The stream narrows, then widens again into a sunken hollow ringed with stones. Water bubbles up from a hidden spring, its surface thick with reflected starlight, though the sky above remains a dusky blue. Sky Woman arrives beside you, though you never saw her move, she says softly, is the pool of first questions. A fringe tidbit for you. Some versions of the Earth Diver stories speak of places where the newly formed world was thin, where one could step between realms or glimpse the thoughts of things yet to come. Small bodies of water were often said to be the most common of these thresholds, probably because of the way water reflects without ever truly revealing. You kneel at the edge. The water is perfectly still, its surface unbroken, despite the gentle murmur of the spring feeding it. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a shape swims up from below. It's you, or something wearing your shape, eyes too bright, hair moving like strands of ink in the water. It raises a hand to mirror yours and speaks, though the surface doesn't break. The words ripple inside your head. What will you leave behind? A scholarly debate point for your list. Folklorists have long discussed the recurring appearance of doppelganger-like figures in native oral traditions. Often, these mirrored selves offer wisdom, warnings, or riddles at critical narrative junctures. Historians still argue whether these figures represent the subconscious mind, ancestral spirits, or simply a narrative device used to reflect a character's doubts and desires. The question lingers. What will you leave behind? Sky Woman watches you calmly, waiting. The muskrat, uncharacteristically solemn, sits on a rock, tail dangling into the water. You consider the world you came from. The unfinished conversations. The late nights spent staring at a screen. The memories of sun-warmed concrete. The chemical scent of city rain. The quiet ache of wanting to belong to somewhere older than your own body. And here, a land still half liquid, half legend, where the trees learn your name and mist creatures ask for stories. I'll leave behind my forgetting, you whisper. The pool shivers. The reflection blurs, then smooths again, this time showing you as you are now. Feet muddy, hair wild, a smear of berry juice at the corner of your mouth you hadn't noticed. Sky Woman nods, satisfied. Good. The world's too new for forgetting. A ripple of warmth spreads through your chest. It feels like being claimed, like a door quietly opening behind you, unseen but certain. The stars above grow brighter. The antlered spirit you glimpsed before watches from the tree line. Its silhouette, just a darker shadow against the dusk. It makes no move to come closer, but it no longer feels like a threat. The people gather near a fire, and the air fills with the scent of burning cedar and green wood. You hear laughter. Not loud, but the easy kind that bubbles up in close company. Someone starts a song, a low chant that rises and falls like a heartbeat. Sky Woman rises. There are stories we tell in the dark, she says, and ones we save for when dawn returns. You follow her back to the fire. The muskrat trails behind, muttering about missed dinners, but his eyes are soft. Around the fire, the people sit in a circle. No one speaks for a long while. The crackle of flame, the hiss of sap, and the distant call of night creatures fill the space instead. Then an old woman begins a tale of a bird that swallowed the sun and how the world's first fire was stolen from the beak of a thunder being. Another adds a story of a snake so large it could drink the rivers dry and the clever weasel who tricked it into tying itself into a knot. A historical fact here. Storytelling circles like this weren't just entertainment. In many indigenous cultures, they were communal teaching spaces, where lessons about hunting, history, weather signs, and kinship rules were woven into tales of spirits and monsters. Historians still argue whether some of these tales preserve memories of ancient ecological disasters or migratory events. You listen, the stories sliding over and around you like soft river water. The fire sinks lower. The air cools. Someone passes a bundle of leaves that smell of mint and earth. You press them to your face, breathing in their sharp, green scent. When sleep comes, it's not with the heavy finality of your old world, but light and certain, like stepping through a curtain you didn't realize was there. And somewhere, you sense the pool of water still reflecting a sky full of names you haven't spoken yet. You wake to the feeling of something warm and feathered nudging your cheek. Blinking against the pale dawn light, you find yourself face to face with a bird the color of smoldering coals. Its eyes are round and unblinking, and it makes a sound that's somewhere between a chirp and a question mark. Morning's here, muses the muskrat from his spot, curled in a pile of moss. And you're still in one piece. Surprising. You sit up. The fire's long since died to a smudge of ash, though faint heat lingers in the earth. Around you the people stir, moving slowly as the day remembers how to be itself. Sky Woman appears beside you, as she always seems to, and gestures toward the distant line where earth and sky blur together. Today, she says softly, the first beasts arrive, a historical fact for your pocket. In many Native American earth diver myths, animals appear in deliberate sequences as the world settles, not randomly, but by necessity. Each creature claims a space, a purpose, a duty. It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most willing. You rise, stretching limbs still heavy with sleep, and follow her through the trees. The leaves hang low with dew, their edges catching sunlight and fracturing it into tiny rainbows. Birds call overhead, a chorus of unfamiliar voices, though a few carry melodies you swear you've heard before in your own world's spring mornings. Ahead, a clearing yawns wide, and in it stands a circle of stones. At its center lies a wide, shallow pool of water, gleaming like a shard of fallen sky. The people gather around its edges, their faces solemn but expectant. Sky Woman lifts a hand. The water shivers. Watch. A shape begins to form, rising from its mirrored surface. First a snout, then antlers, then the heavy, deliberate form of a stag. Its eyes hold entire forests in their depths. A fringe tidbit. Certain Iroquois myths describe the first deer as emerging directly from the land's own dreaming, fully formed and aware. These, quote, dream creatures are said to know the names of the plants and rivers before any human ever spoke them aloud. The stag steps onto the earth, and where its hooves touch, grass curls up from the soil, eager to exist. You watch as it turns its head toward you, and for a moment, you're sure it recognizes you, not from before, but from after. The muskrat mutters, "Show off," though his voice holds a grudging respect. The water ripples again. Next comes a sleek black bear, her fur glossy and thick as midnight. She shakes water from her back, sending droplets flying like tiny jewels. Behind her, a pair of otters, then a fox with fur the color of old copper. Sky Woman leans close. Each brings something, she murmurs. Strength, cleverness, hunger, curiosity. The world needs all of it. A scholarly debate you might enjoy. Anthropologists have puzzled over the order in which animals appear in these stories. Some suggest the sequence reflects ecological priorities of ancient peoples, hunting importance, danger level, symbolic roles, while others argue the order varies so much, it speaks to each storyteller's whim. Historians still argue whether the pattern holds any fixed meaning at all. The clearing grows crowded as more creatures emerge. A lynx, eyes slitted against the light. A turtle, ancient and slow, carrying the scent of deep, still waters. A hawk that shudders its wings but does not fly. The people greet each arrival with low songs. Not words you recognize, but sounds that feel like stone cracking, leaves unfurling, water moving under ice. The animals seem to understand. Sky Woman gestures to the turtle. This one was here before, she says. It carried the mud on its back. The turtle turns its head slowly toward you, blinking in that deliberate way turtles have, as though time moves differently behind those eyes. The muskrat scurries closer, keeping a careful distance from the larger creatures. They'll shape the world, he murmurs. Make it fit to live in. You realize something then. The land isn't entirely solid yet. Look too closely at the edges of things, and they still shimmer, wavering between possible shapes. A hill might become a valley if someone forgets where it's supposed to be. A river might curl the other way if a story's told wrong. It's not chaos. It's just unsettled. Sky Woman begins to sing. It's a sound so old it feels like it predates sound itself. More vibration than music, something you feel in your ribs and your teeth. The people join in, the song rippling outward like light across water. The animals move, taking their places. The deer in the forests, the bear among the caves, the fox slipping through the reeds. A historical fact worth noting. Many native traditions hold that animals taught the first humans how to live, how to hunt, how to build shelter, which plants heal and which harm. In these stories, animals aren't lesser creatures but older kin, bearing the wisdom of earlier worlds. You watch as the clearing empties, each beast moving off into its own patch of the world. The turtle lingers, regarding you one last time before it too slips away. Sky Woman lowers her hand, and the song fades. The world holds shape now, she says softly. Not perfect, but enough. The muskrat lets out a long sigh. Good. Maybe now we eat? The people laugh, and the tension breaks like a branch underfoot. You find yourself smiling. The sky has deepened to a rich, cloudless blue. The leaves overhead catch the light, and for the first time, the world feels wholly, solidly real beneath your feet. You don't know what comes next. But for now, it's enough. The scent of damp earth rises as you move back through the trees. Somewhere to your left, a bird with a voice like a cracked flute sings the same three-note phrase over and over, as if it's rehearsing for an audience it'll never see. The muskrat plods along beside you, tail leaving a lazy trail in the dirt. Sky Woman walks ahead, her footsteps never disturbing a single fallen leaf. You pass under branches heavy with unfamiliar fruit, some like swollen teardrops, others like tiny sunlit fists. A squirrel the size of a small cat chases itself in a spiral around one trunk, its eyes bright and utterly untroubled by the state of creation. The land feels different now. Settled, no longer the shifting, shimmering maybe world you first stumbled into. Solid ground beneath your feet, roots in the soil, stones where stones should be. You realize you'd grown used to the strange softness, the uncertain edges. Part of you misses it already. Sky Woman stops by a stream, the water clear and swift. There are things beneath, she says quietly. Things from before. You peer into the water and catch glimpses of shapes moving below, not fish, but something older. Thin, writhing forms with too many eyes and no mouths. They don't belong to this new world. They're relics from the old. A historical fact for your restless mind. Many indigenous creation myths feature remnants of past worlds that either linger or resurface. The Hopi speak of previous worlds destroyed by fire, flood, or ice, their ruins sometimes peeking through in strange corners of the current one. Historians still argue whether these tales echo ancient oral records of natural disasters or philosophical musings on cycles of renewal. The muskrat shudders. I hate those things. I helped build this place to keep them something else. In this world, nothing's entirely erased. Everything leaves a mark. Sky Woman kneels at the water's edge. Some will slip through, she says, not unkindly. Every world has its shadows. You sit beside her, the grass cool against your skin. A fringe tidbit for you. Among the Cherokee, certain deep pools are believed to be entrances to the underworld, realms of spirits and forgotten things. Even now, some say you shouldn't peer too long into waters that don't move, as they should. The shapes beneath flicker and fade. The current carries them on. Sky Woman stands, brushing dirt from her palms. Come, she says. There's one more creature to call. You follow her through a narrow path, ducking under branches. The air grows warmer, scented with resin and something sharp like crushed mint. The trees here lean in close, their trunks twisted, as though they've been listening to secrets too long. In a small hollow stands a ring of stones. At its center, a single flower. It's nothing remarkable at first glance. 5 white petals, a yellow center. But you feel its presence like a weight in the air. Sky Woman's voice softens. This is the historical aside here. In several native earth diver narratives, plants are the final creations to arrive, often sprouting spontaneously from sacred sites or the footsteps of divine figures. Historians still argue whether these tales reflect the agricultural transition of ancient peoples or a symbolic elevation of plant life as the last, perfecting touch. The muskrat stays back. Flowers make me sneeze. You step closer. The flower's scent is faint, a cool, clean thing that reminds you of the way air smells before snow. A bee, or something very much like a bee but with feathers, hovers nearby, then darts off. Sky Woman gestures to the bloom. The world breathes through this. You crouch to look closer. For a moment, it seems to glow, the white of its petals bright as bone in moonlight. You swear you can hear it humming. A fringe tidbit. The Ojibwe tell of a flower that sings at dawn, its voice too high for human ears. It's said to remember the songs of the old world and carry them into the new. You reach out, not to pick it, but to touch the air around it. The sensation is strange, like warm glass that's just barely still liquid. Sky Woman smiles. Now you've felt it. You'll never quite forget. The world seems to steady itself around that tiny bloom, as though even the mountains and rivers, still distant, lean in for a better look. The muskrat scratches his head. Is it snack time yet? Sky Woman laughs, and the sound is like the first breeze after a storm. She leads you back through the trees, and you realize the land has changed again. The colors brighter, the shapes more certain. Birds you hadn't noticed before move through the branches. The wind carries the scent of smoke, not fire for destruction smoke, but hearth smoke. Cooked roots, roasted meat, maybe something sweet. The people gather in a wide clearing. A fire burns at the center, its light spilling over faces both old and new. Children chase each other. Adults work at preparing food, and the antlered spirit watches from the shadows, a silent sentinel. Sky Woman takes a seat by the fire. You follow. The muskrat dives into a pile of berries with a grunt of satisfaction. And you breathe deep, the air filled with 100 scents and sounds. You realize the world is no longer a might be. It's here, solid, imperfect, alive. The first stories have been told, the first beast called, the earth's skin stretched and settled. But there are still questions, and shadows, and flowers waiting to bloom. The night will come again, and with it, more stories. You lean back against a thick-barked tree, its surface warm from the late afternoon sun. The fire crackles in the clearing's center, sending tiny sparks into the air that vanish before they land. Around you, the people gather, their faces flickering with orange light. Laughter hums low like distant bees. The world has steadied, but now comes the part no one likes to talk about. The naming. Sky Woman rises, her hair catching the light like spun metal. We've called the beasts, shaped the land, and set the rivers to their winding ways, she begins. But a world without names is a world without memory. A historical fact to pocket here. Nearly every culture in early oral traditions believed names held power. To name a thing was to know it, to bind it to the weave of the world. Among the Iroquois, words themselves were considered living tools, capable of shaping events by their mere utterance. Historians still argue whether naming ceremonies reflected social control, religious devotion, or a bit of both. You feel it in your bones, the hush before something big. Even the muskrat stops chewing a fat root he'd been gnawing, blinking at Sky Woman like he's aware of the moment's weight. The first to be named is the stag. Antlers like bare branches in winter, eyes reflecting things you can't see. I will call you Inyo, Sky Woman says. Strong branch, holder of forests. The stag bows its head once and melts into the tree line. One by one, she names the others. The bear becomes Tanyet's soft shadow. The fox, Kole, fire's trickster. Even the muskrat gets one, Tsutla, which she says means small courage. He beams with such pride you have to look away or you'll laugh. A fringe tidbit here. In some Cherokee tales, animals named by divine figures carry those names into every incarnation. It's said a fox anywhere, in any time, is still a piece of the original Kolai, no matter how many winters pass. When she finishes naming the beasts, Sky Woman turns to the land itself. She gestures to the mountains, rising like sleeping animals in the distance. These shall be called the bones of the earth, the rivers, the moving trees, silver, the standing ancestors. Each name feels like a stone dropping into a still pool, sending ripples you can almost see. The air grows heavier, thick with meaning. And then, the people. One by one, Sky Woman walks to them, placing a hand on each shoulder, speaking a word you don't quite catch. Their faces change as they hear it, as if they've been waiting for that name their whole lives. Which, in a way, they have. You realize no one's coming to name you, because you don't belong here. A scholar's debate for you. Some early European settlers who recorded Native American myths puzzled over outsider figures like yourself, who appear in stories with no clear origin or fate. Historians still argue whether these were ancient narrative devices, spirit figures, or metaphors for change. Sky Woman reaches the last person, a child barely taller than your waist, and names her Atava, Little Flame. And then the world exhales. The tension returns. The muskrat flops down beside you, looking smug. Got a name now. You don't. You roll your eyes. It's almost night again. The sky fades to dark indigo, scattered with stars sharp enough to cut. The fire burns low, coals the color of old blood. Sky Woman sits across from you, eyes reflecting the firelight. You're not named, she says softly, because you're still moving. And you get it. Names here fix things in place. You, with your wandering, your strange arrival, your looming departure. You can't be pinned like the beasts or the trees or the rivers. Not yet. A fringe tidbit for flavor. In some Anishinaabe stories, nameless spirits wander the edges of creation, shaping events without belonging to them. They carry neither clan nor home, existing in the space between one story's ending and the next's beginning. Sky Woman gestures for you to follow. Away from the fire, past the edge of the clearing, into the trees. The air cools quickly without the fire's glow. Night insects hum and click, the forest's own lullaby. She stops by a large, flat stone. Moonlight makes it shine like glass. This was here before, she says. Before the first breath, before the beasts, before even me. She places a hand on it. There are names older than ours. Ones we don't speak. And realize faint markings etch its surface. Spirals, claw marks, a symbol like a hand with too many fingers. A historical fact. Archaeological evidence of ancient petroglyphs across North America predate many known tribal histories. Their meanings remain a mystery. Historians still argue whether they marked territorial claims, religious rites, or records of great events. Sky Woman traces one of the symbols. We leave them alone. You glance up at her. Why? Because some stories sleep, she says, and not everything that sleeps should wake. The wind stirs the leaves. The muskrat shivers. You feel it too, a kind of pressure in the air, as if something beneath that stone remembers being named once, and might remember you, if you're not careful. Sky Woman turns away, and the moment passes. Come, she says. The night's falling, and there are other stories waiting. You head back toward the fire, toward the laughter and songs, toward the world of names and shapes and places where you almost belong. And behind you the stone waits. The fire's glow pulls you back like a tide, and soon the sounds of quiet conversation, the crackle of dry wood and the occasional belly-deep laugh wrap around you like a well-worn blanket. The people sit in a wide ring now, some cross-legged, others stretched out on their sides, faces flickering between light and shadow. Even the muskrat has found a comfortable spot on a flat stone, munching berries like he owns the place. Sky Woman doesn't sit this time. She stands at the center, hands lifted toward the night sky, her voice carrying not loud but clear. The names are spoken, she says. The land breathes, but there's a piece still missing. A hush settles over the gathering. You feel it crawl up your arms, raising the hair on your skin. It's not fear, exactly. More like recognition. Some part of you already knows what comes next. The stories, she says softly. A world without stories is a world without memory. No matter how solid the earth or deep the rivers, without them, it's nothing but dirt and water. A historical fact worth remembering. Among the Iroquois and many other indigenous nations, oral storytelling isn't a pastime. It's the framework for law, history, morality, and survival. Some stories could only be told in winter, others during harvest. Historians still argue whether these strict storytelling calendars were cultural memory aids or spiritual protections against certain knowledge spoken out of season. Sky Woman kneels and scoops a bit of ash from the fire, smearing it across her palms. "Tonight," she says, "we tell the old story of the Earth Diver." You blink. Wait, wasn't that the thing you'd already been living through? The fall from the sky? The swimming beasts? The clod of earth raised from the water's bottom? You glance at the muskrat, who shrugs. "Cycles, buddy. You'll get used to it." A fringe tidbit for you. In many native traditions, time isn't strictly linear. It's a spiral, an ongoing loop, where stories repeat, shift, and fold into themselves. The same event might happen differently every telling, each variation layering meaning upon meaning. Sky Woman motions toward an elder, a man whose hair falls in silver-black waves past his shoulders. He clears his throat, and when he speaks, it's with a voice like cracked stone, smoothed by years of rain. "In the beginning," he says, "there was only water, a vast, endless sea beneath a sky so wide it forgot to end." You watch as the people lean closer, their faces reflecting firelight and memory. The children stare, wide-eyed, some with open mouths. You realize you're holding your breath. "Above that water," the elder continues, "there was a land where beings moved like thoughts, light and unbound. One of them, curious and carrying the life of a child, peered too closely over the edge." You know this story. It's your story. But hearing it told aloud, with flourishes and pauses, with the rustle of leaves and the crackle of flames, it feels new and ancient. "And when she fell," the elder says, his voice dropping like a stone into a well, "the world below stirred for the first time." A scholarly debate you'll appreciate. Anthropologists have long discussed the similarities in water-based creation myths across distant indigenous cultures. Historians still argue whether these common threads hint at shared prehistoric memories of a great flood or stem from humanity's instinctive relationship with water as both life-giver and destroyer. The elder's voice rises again. He speaks of the diving animals, of the loon's sleek form slicing through the water, of the otter's cleverness, of the beaver's strength, and finally, of the muskrat's desperate dive. Your muskrat puffs out his chest. "I get taller every telling," he whispers. And then, the clod of earth, the tiny scrap of land cradled by turtle, grown by Sky Woman's touch into soil, stone, and river. Shaped, the elder says. But the shaping never stops. You feel the words settle in your chest like something heavy and warm. The world isn't a thing made once and left to stand. It's a thing continuously respoken, reshaped, remembered into being. A fringe tidbit to tuck away. Among the Cherokee, it's believed the earth is held on the back of a great water beetle who first pulled mud from the depths. Even now, earthquakes are said to be the beetle shifting its load. The elder's story winds down, his voice thinning like mist at dawn. He ends not with a grand moral, but with a simple truth. And so we are here. And so we remain. The fire pops loudly, sending a shower of sparks upward. The people sit in silence for a beat longer, and in that breathless moment, you swear the forest itself listens. Then, slowly, conversations resume. Someone passes a woven bowl of roasted seeds. A child giggles as the muskrat snatches a stray berry. The night returns to its usual pulse. Sky Woman stands beside you. "Now you understand," she says. You nod, though you're not entirely sure what you understand. Maybe that's the point. Another historical note. Many indigenous creation myths were not meant to explain the how of the world, but the why. Why we gather, why we remember, why we leave offerings at certain stones and refuse to say some names. Historians still argue whether these tales reflect philosophical inquiry, coded survival instructions, or expressions of grief and joy braided together. Sky Woman touches your shoulder. "There'll be more stories," she promises. "Some for winter, some for sickness, some for when the world ends again." The muskrat licks berry juice from his paws. "I could tell a story." Sky Woman arches an eyebrow. "Maybe later." You smile, the fire warm against your face, the scent of earth and ash settling into your clothes. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird calls. And the world, still new, still ancient, breathes. The night deepens, thick as ink poured over the land. The stars, once sharp points of cold light, blur as a thin mist creeps in from the water's edge. The fire burns low now, coals mostly, like sleeping eyes scattered in a ring. Around you, the people begin to settle, some curling up beneath woven blankets, others simply leaning against trees. The muskrat is already snoring beside a hollowed stump, his tiny chest rising and falling. But you can't sleep. Not yet. Sky Woman hasn't left the clearing. She sits alone on a flat rock, the mist curling around her ankles like a living thing. You feel a pull, a thread you can't see but know you're meant to follow. You cross the clearing, the earth cool under your feet, and settle beside her. There's another story, she says, not looking at you. One older than the earth diver. One we only tell when the mist comes like this. And sure enough, the mist has thickened into long curling fingers, soft and cold, making the trees into pale ghosts. A historical fact worth remembering. Many Native American traditions treat fog and mist as spirit weather, a veil between this world and another. Some tribes, like the Ojibwe, believe mist is the breath of forgotten ancestors, returning to listen when stories are told properly. Historians still argue whether these beliefs arose from natural weather patterns or from deeper mythic symbolism tied to water's shifting states. Sky Woman begins in a low, almost hesitant voice. World, before the fall, there was a place called the first sky. Not a heaven, not a cloud realm, but something in between. A place of drifting light, where beings were born as thoughts, not flesh. She gestures upward, though the mist obscures the stars now. In the first sky, she continues, no one needed names, because no one was separate. Every being felt the others as their own skin, their own breath. There was no loneliness, no greed, no grief. You imagine it, a place without sharp edges or hard choices. No jealousy, no hunger. Sounds like paradise, right? The kind of world modern philosophers would write entire books about while wearing turtlenecks and stroking their chins. But here's the thing Sky Woman says next, and it lands like a stone in your gut. They were happy, she says, but they were bored. A fringe tidbit for you. In some lesser-known creation stories from the Cherokee and Creek people, the first beings were neither fully divine nor mortal, and their downfall wasn't sin, but boredom. They longed for friction, for surprise, and from that yearning, the known world cracked open. And so, Sky Woman murmurs, they made something different, a single, small idea. What if a place existed where beings did not know each other's hearts, where they could be kind or cruel, brave or afraid, where mistakes had weight, where sorrow tasted as real as sweet berries, where life was a path, not a shared glow. A scholar's debate for the night. Some anthropologists propose that stories like these reflect early humanity's awareness of consciousness as both a blessing and a burden. Historians still argue whether these myths were philosophical tools for coping with self-awareness, or simple cautionary tales meant to explain why life feels so hard sometimes. Sky Woman reaches into the dying fire and lifts a tiny coal with her bare hand. It doesn't burn her. They took a spark, she says, and dropped it into the great water. You can almost see it, a single point of light sinking into an endless dark sea. The ripples spreading, the water remembering the shape of it. And from that, she says, not just everything else, not just turtle in the muskrat's brave dive, but hunger, laughter, songs, the ache you feel in your chest when someone leaves and doesn't return, the taste of a cold berry on a hot day, the fear you carry when the mist curls like this, and you remember how small you really are. Another fringe tidbit. In some Iroquois variations, it's believed the spark from the first sky still moves through the world, hidden in certain stones, songs, and bloodlines. Some say you can feel it in your bones when the air turns just before a storm, or when a story wraps itself so tightly around your heart you forget where you are. Sky Woman closes her palm around the coal, and it vanishes. We tell that one, she says, when the mist comes. You glance around. The people have fallen fully asleep now. Even the insects have quieted, their hum replaced by the soft rush of water somewhere out of sight. You'll leave soon, Sky Woman says, not a question. You nod. You don't know how or when, but it feels inevitable. Like a book you've almost finished reading. There's one more thing you need to see. She rises. This time, you follow without hesitation, past the sleeping figures, past the muskrat's soft snores, past the last of the fire's glow, into a stretch of forest where the mist hangs so thick it clings to your hair, your skin, your teeth. Sky Woman hums as she walks, a tune you don't recognize, but one that feels old. The kind of melody you hum without realizing, like a lullaby half-remembered. In the center stands a stone taller than any person, rough and mottled, covered in lichen so thick it looks like green fur. Faint carvings mark its surface. Spirals, crude animals, a single handprint larger than any hand should be. A doorstone, Sky Woman says. A historical fact to log. Throughout North America, Standing stones with petroglyphs predate most recorded tribal histories. Some are arranged in patterns aligning with solstices and equinoxes. Historians still argue whether these were markers for trade, burial, or ritual paths between realms. Sky Woman gestures toward it. Some leave through the mist, some through water, and some through stone. You step closer, and the air grows heavy, thick with that humming tension you felt by the fire. Sky Woman speaks a word you don't recognize, and the stone opens. Just a crack. Enough. The stone doesn't so much open as it unfolds. A vertical crack peels wide enough for a person, a slick shimmer of lightless blackness beyond. Not the kind of darkness you get in a windowless room at midnight. This is the color of nothing, the ink left over before the world was written. Sky Woman stands beside it, unafraid, her hair moving slightly though there's no breeze. You swallow hard, because of course you're going in there. It's practically law, at this point. You take a single step forward, and the ground hums under your foot. You're sure about this? The muskrat's voice pops up at your elbow. He's awake now, standing with a dried berry still clutched in one paw, eyes bleary but loyal. I'm sure, you say, surprising yourself. Sky Woman tilts her head. The path leads where it always leads. A historical fact for you. Several Native American traditions speak of stone doorways or spirit portals, natural rock formations believed to be thresholds to the spirit world or older realms. The Ojibwe have stories of rocks that sing in storms, while the Zuni and Hopi refer to sipapus, small holes or openings in sacred sites representing the passageway between worlds. Historians still argue whether these references are metaphorical or rooted in memory of actual ritual sites long lost to time. You glance once at the muskrat. He gives you a tiny salute with his berry. I'll hold down the fort. And then you step through. Immediately the air changes. It's heavy, pressing close to your skin like the inside of a cave, cool but not cold, and thick with a scent like damp earth after a storm. There's no floor, yet you don't fall. No walls, yet you're contained. It's impossible to tell whether you're moving or if the world itself is sliding past you. Shapes loom and dissolve, the curve of a great antler, the flash of fish-scale light, a tangle of roots that pulse like veins. And then, ahead, a flicker, a pinpoint of dull gold. Because honestly, what else are you going to do? Netflix isn't an option in the void. As you approach, the gold light grows, resolving into what looks like a floating, slowly rotating sphere of earth, about the size of a large apple. But when you lean in, you see tiny rivers, miniature mountains, thread-thin forests clinging to it. It's a world. A fringe tidbit. Several Iroquois subtribes believed that not one, but multiple Earths existed in layered worlds. The one we live on now was said to be the third or fourth attempt, following others that collapsed due to imbalance or corruption. In those stories, select spirits would be tasked with carrying the memory of each failed world into the next. Sky Woman's voice is suddenly at your shoulder, though you didn't hear her arrive. This, she says, was the first try. You squint. The miniature world isn't entirely whole. Chunks appear missing, small black gaps in its surface, as though pieces had been bitten away. What happened? She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she reaches out with both hands and gently cradles the tiny world. They fought, she says quietly. They wanted to name things before they were ready, to claim before they understood. And you realize, those gaps, those missing chunks, they're not accidents. They're the result of greed, of rush, of taking before giving. A scholar's debate you'll appreciate. Many native myths frame human missteps not as defiance against gods, but as imbalance within creation itself. Historians still argue whether this worldview arose from animist traditions or served as coded law for resource management in early tribal societies. Sky Woman sighs and lets the tiny world drift away. It dissolves into dust and light, vanishing without sound. The one you walk now is stronger, she says. But nothing lasts forever. You swallow, feeling the weight of that sentence settle in your gut. Then, ahead, another light. This one greenish, softer, rippling like the surface of water on a windy day. And without being told, you know it's time to move again. As you approach, you hear voices. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some laughing, some sobbing, some murmuring in languages you don't understand. It's overwhelming, a rising tide of human sound, figures moving within the green light. Shapes too blurred to distinguish faces, but you sense them. Hunters, mothers, children, elders, warriors, weavers, and singers. All those who lived and shaped the land before you. All those who dove for the earth and built homes on a turtle's back. And every one of them is holding something. A bundle, a feather, a stone, a memory. Things too important to leave behind. A historical fact to tuck away. In some native funeral customs, it's believed that the dead carry with them small items from this world as offerings or guides into the next. These might be beads, bits of fur, or stones marked with personal symbols. Historians still argue whether these items served a religious function or simply honored the dead's personal story. Sky Woman stands beside you again. These are the rememberers, she says. The ones who carried the old world's lessons into the next. You'll join them someday. It's not a threat or a promise. Just a fact, and you find you're okay with that. For now, though, one more path. The green light parts, and before you lies a thin thread of blue-white glow stretching into the mist. A final road. You glance at Sky Woman. Ready? She asks. You nod and step forward. Your foot lands on something solid, though it looks like light itself. The path beneath you glows a faint blue-white, curving ahead into the mist that folds over everything like a great sleeping animal. The air smells of cold stone and green things buried deep. The path feels old. Older than Sky Woman, older than Turtle, older than even the first sky she spoke of. Sky Woman doesn't follow this time. She lingers behind with the rememberers, watching you with an expression you can't quite name. Maybe pride, maybe sorrow, maybe both. Some doors, she calls softly. You walk alone. A historical fact for you. In many Native American rites of passage, there's a moment where the initiate is sent into isolation, often into a forest or onto a mountaintop, to seek a vision. It's not punishment. It's an invitation. Historians still argue whether this practice arose from survival training or spiritual necessity, though both explanations hold water. So you move forward. The mist thickens and curls around your legs. It tugs gently at your ankles like curious fingers. The path curves, and as you round a bend, you see it. A vast, open space where the mist falls away into a yawning darkness, so complete it feels alive. At the center of that void hovers something massive. A shape you recognize without understanding how. It's the earth itself. Not the one you walk now, but a version of it. A world still forming, its surface covered in dark water, with only the faintest hints of land rising, fragile, trembling, newborn. A fringe tidbit. In certain Ojibwe and Seneca traditions, the earth was believed to be created again and again, cycling through destruction and rebirth. Each time the old world's mistakes would sink beneath the water, and the muskrat or another small animal would dive to retrieve a scrap of mud to build the new. Some stories claim we're currently on the fifth world. You can see the marks of those earlier worlds now. Faint shapes beneath the water, sunken forests, ancient mountains long drowned. Shadows of past attempts. And hanging above it, a figure. Not Sky Woman. Not any animal you know, both bird and storm cloud. Its wings spread wide enough to cover a horizon. Its body seems made of mist and lightning, eyes glowing pale blue. You sense, rather than hear, its voice. You are late. Asterisk. Not a rebuke, more a simple fact. Like someone remarking on the weather. I didn't know I was coming, you admit. Few do. Asterisk. A scholarly debate you'll appreciate. Several myths describe a great bird or thunder being overseeing the birth of each world. The Iroquois speak of the thunderers, spirits who control the rains and winds. Historians still argue whether these beings are elemental metaphors or ancestral memory of ancient bird worship rituals, long buried by time. The great figure lowers its massive head. You carry the dust of the old, and you realize your hands, your skin, your clothes are dusted with fine, silvery powder. It clings like pollen after walking through wildflowers. This is the dust of endings, the being says, and the dust of beginnings. It gestures with one vast wing, and a shape detaches from the forming world below. A small island, half-formed, trembling like a heartbeat. This will be yours. You hesitate. I don't know what to do. A deep, soundless chuckle. Neither did the first muskrat, or the first people, or the first storm. That is the point. A historical fact for your collection. Many creation myths are less about explaining origins, and more about modeling uncertainty. The Cherokee, for instance, have a tale where the world shapeshifts constantly, held together only by a spider's web. It reminds people that balance is fragile, and certainty is dangerous. The great being flaps its wings, stirring the mist. A small figure scurries up beside you. The muskrat, berry-stained mouth, sleepy eyes. I thought you were guarding the fire, you say. He shrugs. Got bored. Plus, you look like you might need backup. A grin tugs at the corner of your mouth. The bird cloud form inclines its head. Very well. Both of you. The small island floats closer. It's a patch of earth, no bigger than a pond's surface. A few tufts of grass. A trickle of clear water. A single stone. Humble. Fragile. Beautiful. You reach out. The muskrat pats your wrist. Careful, you touch it. It bites, and the moment you do, warmth. The soil remembers you. The water hums beneath your skin. The single stone glows faintly. A fringe tidbit. In several Mohawk and Onondaga traditions, newly created land was named into place. Naming was power. Until something was named, it couldn't fully exist. Some elders claim you can still name places into being if the world is listening. What should we call it? You whisper. The great bird being answers with a rush of wind. Asterisk, you will know. Asterisk. And in that moment, you do. The name isn't words. It's a feeling. A taste. The scent of rain on dust. The pulse of a heartbeat you thought was someone else's, but turns out to be your own. It settles inside you. Sky Woman's voice carries faintly on the mist, though you can't see her. Welcome, keeper of the little world. And the island beneath your hand grows warmer. Not much, but enough. The warmth seeps up through your palm and into your chest, a sensation like remembering a song you didn't know you knew. The little patch of earth hums beneath your touch, as if acknowledging you, not with words, but with something older than language. The muskrat peers down at it, nose twitching. Nice dirt, he offers, ever the poet. Above you, the massive bird cloud being folds its wings, a ripple moving through the mist as it retreats into the gloom. It doesn't leave. It simply ceases to be seen, as though slipping sideways into some corner of existence your eyes can't follow. For the first time in what feels like hours, maybe days, the silence is thick and gentle. No voices, no echoes. Just you, the muskrat, and your tiny trembling island of earth. A historical fact you might appreciate. According to many Iroquois accounts, the first land created on the turtle's back wasn't a continent, or even a vast plain. It was a small clump of earth, just big enough to cradle Sky Woman and the handful of animals who'd helped. From that modest start, it expanded, shaped by the creature's movements and Sky Woman's steps. Historians still argue whether this story was meant to reflect natural land formations or to encourage humility in human ambition. The muskrat flops onto his back beside you, staring up at the mist-shrouded sky. So what now? It's a good question. You look down at the patch of earth again. The grass quivers in a wind you can't feel. The single stone pulses faintly. A tiny bead of water trickles along a shallow groove in the soil. It's not much, but it's alive. Sky Woman's words drift back to you. They fought, trying to name before understanding. Take a breath. No naming. Not yet. Instead, you dip your fingers into the water. It's colder than expected, sharp and clean, carrying the tang of mineral and rain. You trace a line through the earth, guiding the trickle into a gentle curve. The soil shifts, reshaping itself to your touch. A fringe tidbit for you. Some native tribes believed land itself could be reasoned with, that rivers, stones, and soil were sentient, capable of feeling insult or affection. There are stories of villages moving because a hill or creek gave a warning through dreams. A few elders still whisper about such things today, though they'll often laugh after, as if to soften the claim. You feel that now. The earth listens. A tiny sprout breaks through the soil where your finger passed. A fragile pale green thing, its leaves slick and shining. The muskrat lets out a low whistle. Show off. You grin and sit back on your heels. But then, movement. From the mist beyond the island, shapes begin to emerge. Small at first. A pair of otters, fur slick with mist. A turtle no bigger than a dinner plate, ancient eyes peering from beneath its shell. A pair of hawks, wheeling lazily overhead. And behind them, Sky Woman. She steps onto the island as though it's always been here, her feet leaving no mark. The creatures gather around her, and you realize. These aren't ordinary animals. Their eyes hold the same knowing weight as the rememberers in the green light. A historical debate worth mentioning. Some anthropologists argue whether mythic animals in native creation stories represent literal animals or symbolic archetypes, traits like cunning, courage, or wisdom personified in fur and feather. Historians still argue whether these stories arose independently across tribes or from ancient migrations carrying the same oral roots. Sky Woman kneels beside the stone, placing her palm upon it. The land remembers those who tend it, she says softly. It grows stronger with each hand laid upon it. She gestures to the other animals. One by one they step forward, brushing paw, wing, or shell against the earth. Each contact leaves a faint shimmer, a pulse through the soil. When it's the muskrat's turn, he licks his paw and presses it down with exaggerated ceremony. For the record, he mutters, I still think this should have been a pond. Sky Woman smiles. Your turn. You place your hand back onto the earth. It feels warmer now. Steady, humming beneath your palm like a heartbeat syncing with your own. A ripple runs through the soil. The sprout unfurls another leaf. The bead of water thickens into a proper trickle. A fringe tidbit. In certain eastern woodlands tribes, new settlements began with a ritual of earth touching, where each tribe member would place a hand on the ground to bind their spirit to the land. Some say the earth would reveal omens through texture or warmth, a promise or a warning. Sky Woman
Now
lifts her
she
gaze.
says,
Name it, and this time, you understand. Not a word. Not a title. A feeling. You close your eyes. You think of the warmth in the soil, the muskrat's muddy paw print, the glow of the stone, the way the mist parted to reveal this fragile piece of somewhere. The way you felt stepping into the unknown without a map. The way the earth listened. And in the space between heartbeats, the name forms. It's not a sound. It's the hush before dawn. It's the coolness of stone beneath sun-warmed hands. It's the quiet belonging you feel in wild, unclaimed places. You open your eyes. The island knows. And it settles. The stone brightens, then fades to a gentle, steady glow. The sprout sways in an unseen breeze. Sky Woman rises. It is done. And you know, without being told, that the path forward is yours to make now. The earth hums beneath your fingertips, and it feels different now. Not just a patch of soil, but something awake. A thing with memory, breathing quietly beneath the surface. The muskrat sits up, ears flicking. Well, he says, brushing dirt from his fur. Guess you're officially a world maker now. Hope you negotiated dental. You let out a soft laugh, and it feels good. Not forced. Not nervous. Just human. Sky Woman stands, the mist shifting around her like a living shawl. The land will grow, she says, but it will remember how it was shaped. She gestures to your makeshift stream, the tender sprout, the stone that still gives off a quiet light. Everything leaves a mark, a historical fact for you. Many Native American cultures, particularly the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, believed land itself kept memory, not in the way people do, with stories and songs, but through shape, fertility, and subtle shifts. Fields planted selfishly might turn barren. Rivers moved carelessly might flood without reason. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were spiritual metaphors or ecological wisdom translated into myth. The mist stirs again, and you hear new voices. Not words exactly, but sounds like wind through branches, water over stone, the distant cry of a hawk. The island feels as though it's holding its breath. From the haze step 4 figures. Animals, but not like the others you've seen. Larger. Older. Dream-shaped. A bear. Its fur gray as smoke and eyes deep as nightfall. A heron, taller than Sky Woman herself, each feather tipped in iridescent blue. A coyote with one ear torn and a grin like he knows every bad thing you've ever done and loves you for it anyway. And a turtle. Not a small one this time, but so vast that with each step, the earth seems to lean to accommodate its weight. The muskrat mutters, well, this is either real good or real bad. Sky Woman inclines her head. A fringe the witnesses. In several Onondaga and Seneca traditions, when a great decision was made, selecting a chief, declaring peace, the natural world was called to bear witness. Certain animals were believed to carry those moments in their bloodlines, passing memory from mother to cub, from egg to hatchling. Some elders claim a raven somewhere still remembers the first sunrise. The 4 beings move to the edge of your small island, their eyes fixing on you. The bear speaks first, his voice like distant thunder. Do you claim this shaping? Asterisk. Your throat goes dry. You glance at Sky Woman, but she says nothing. The muskrat gives you a tiny thumbs up, probably sarcastic. You take a breath. I do. The heron tilts its head. Its voice is the rush of a river in spring. Do you tend this land with care? Asterisk. You nod. I will. The coyote grins wider. Do you promise to get it wrong? To try again? To know that breaking is not the end? Asterisk. That one surprises you, but you answer honestly. Yes. The turtle's voice is so deep, it feels like it comes from inside your bones. Do you carry this world's name in your heart, not your mouth? Asterisk. You don't hesitate. I do. A historical fact. Among many tribes, names of sacred places and spirits weren't spoken lightly, sometimes only in certain seasons or by those who'd earned the right. The Cherokee word for the Great Spirit was so rarely spoken aloud that its exact original pronunciation is debated even now. Historians still argue whether this was rooted in superstition or profound respect. The 4 witnesses nod as one. And then, the bear steps forward. From his broad paw, a seed. He places it in the soil. The heron lays down a feather. The coyote sheds a single tooth, which lands with a soft thud. And the turtle, impossibly massive, lowers his head and presses his beak to the earth. Where each touch lands, the soil pulses. A seed sprouts. The feather turns to mist and rains down in tiny silver drops. The tooth sinks into the earth, and a small, crooked tree bursts forth, gnarled but strong. Where the turtle touched, a stone rises, broad and flat, marked with faint lines like veins. The muskrat leans close. You're really racking up the souvenirs, champ. Sky Woman steps to your side. The land remembers, she says softly. Each gift is a thread, the weave of a world. A fringe tidbit for you. In Ojibwe lore, dream catchers weren't just for filtering nightmares. They were considered maps of stories, with each knot and bead a marker of something witnessed or learned. Some old ones, if you can find them, tell entire histories if you know how to read the patterns. You kneel beside the seedling from the bear's paw. It's already sprouting tiny leaves, deep green with veins of gold. You can feel it growing. Not fast, not impatient, but steady. The way good things should. The heron's silver feather mist makes your skin tingle, a light static, like summer lightning far away. The coyote's tree leans toward you, crooked, stubborn. Indeed, the turtle stone hums under your palm, solid as promise. Sky Woman touches your shoulder. You made your world, she murmurs. Now comes the keeping. You sense the witnesses withdrawing into the mist. Not gone, never gone, but returned to their watching places. The muskrat grins. You're gonna need a bigger notebook. And you realize you're smiling too. The world is small still. A single patch of earth. A sprout. A crooked tree. A trickle of water. But it's yours. And it lives. The island settles, a subtle hush falling over it like the moment just before rain. You can feel the life in it now. Not just see it, but sense it. A pulse beneath the soil. A quiet murmur in the tiny stream you coaxed from the earth. The muskrat lies flat on his back, eyes half closed, paws crossed behind his head like he's just wrapped up a long shift at the universe factory. Not bad, he mutters, for a first-time world shaper. Sky Woman watches you, and though she says nothing, there's a warmth in her expression that feels like approval. Or perhaps caution. Maybe both. That's the thing about old stories. They never hand out simple answers. A historical fact here. The concept of land as memory appears in many native traditions. Among the Cherokee, there's the belief that land remembers violence and joy alike, that battles, rituals, and births stain the soil in ways visible only to those trained to read it. Historians still argue whether this belief influenced territorial disputes or ceremonial site selections across centuries. You crouch near the crooked little tree, its leaves still trembling from whatever ancient magic had summoned it. You touch its rough bark. The moment your skin makes contact, an image blooms in your head. Not a word or vision, but a feeling. The giddy terror of standing at a cliff's edge. The thrill of speaking your name to a sky with no ceiling. A promise of endless becoming. Tree's got attitude, Muskrat says, peeking one eye open. I like it, you reply. Sky Woman kneels beside the stone the turtle left, tracing the faint natural lines that spiderweb across its surface. They look almost like a map, not of places, but of time. A fringe tidbit for you. Certain Algonquin and Iroquoian peoples use stones with natural markings to tell stories or forecast seasons. Called spirit stones or talking rocks, these were believed to change subtly over time, new lines forming, old ones fading. Some communities maintained stone circles specifically for watching these patterns shift. The mist parts slightly as Sky Woman speaks. There's something you should see. She rises, gesturing for you to follow. You hesitate, glancing down at the island. It will keep. What about? She says simply. The muskrat stretches and flops to his feet. If someone tries to steal the tree, I'll bite him. You follow her through the mist, the world narrowing to a thin path of damp earth, your footsteps leaving soft impressions. You wonder if those too will be remembered. It doesn't take long before the ground changes. You step from soil to stone, the texture rough beneath your bare feet. Ahead, a shallow pool glimmers in a hollow, the surface still as glass. Sky Woman stands at its edge. This is the memory of what was, she says, and the warning of what might be. You kneel, peering into the water. At first, it's your reflection, blurred, half real. Then the surface shifts, and images appear. You see a world without the island. An endless mist, creatures wandering lost, the earth beneath them cracking, drifting apart like broken ice. You see another, lush and green, countless islands, rivers threading between them like silver veins, creatures moving easily through it, the sky vast and open. And another, the earth overrun, trees dying, water turning thick and black, animals fighting for scraps, the stone map split down the middle. Which one? You flinch. You begin. Sky Woman shakes her head. That depends on the keepers. A historical fact worth noting. In many Native American origin stories, creation isn't a singular, flawless event. It's a process. The world can be made and unmade, its shape and fate determined by the choices of those who walk it. Among the Ojibwe, it's said, the great flood came not once but many times, each era ending in water and beginning with earth gathered anew. You watch the images cycle, one after the other. The muskrat pads up beside you, frowning. Well, that's cheery. He noses your arm. You remember how you made this place? You do. The seed, the feather, the tooth, the stone. You shaped it with help, Sky Woman says. And with care. The implication hangs in the air. Keep doing it, or else. The do naris nope. A fringe tidbit here. Some of the old oral traditions include stories of people losing their worlds, quite literally. Places sinking, forests turning against their inhabitants, rivers reversing course. These weren't necessarily punishments, but natural consequences of imbalance. If the earth was mistreated or neglected, it simply withdrew. You run your fingers through the water, and the images blur into ripples, you ask. Always, Sky Woman answers. Nothing is fixed, not even endings. That feels important. Maybe the most important thing you've heard all night. The muskrat dips a paw into the pool and flicks water at your face, breaking the tension. Come on, he grins. Let's get back to our mossy little empire. You chuckle, the weight in your chest easing a fraction. Sky Woman lingers by the pool, her reflection merging with the mist. Remember what you saw, she says softly. The world is neither kind nor cruel. It only becomes what you make of it. And with that, she turns and vanishes into the fog. You and the muskrat head back, the path feeling different now. Not because the mist has changed, but because you have. The island waits, the crooked trees' leaves catching an invisible breeze, the water singing softly. You realize then that building a world isn't about control. It's about tending, about staying, about doing the small, good things, even when no one's watching. Especially then, and in this mist-bound place of endless beginnings, that feels like enough. By the time you and the muskrat make it back to your little patch of earth, the island's grown. It's not dramatic, no thunderclap, no fanfare. But the sprout is now a sapling, its leaves broader, its branches starting to curl toward the sky. The stream has thickened to a clear, shallow ribbon, tracing a shimmering curve around a cluster of stones. Moss spreads in patches, and tiny white flowers peek from between the rocks. Not bad, the muskrat whistles, plopping down beside the water. Give it a week, we'll have Wi-Fi. You chuckle, kneeling to touch the stream's surface. It's cold, clean, and impossibly fresh, like the first water anyone ever drank. You cup some to your lips and find it tastes not just of water, but of Turskrat before. It's as if it carries memory, like everything else here. A historical fact for you. In many indigenous stories, the first water was considered a sacred being rather than a mere element. Among the Iroquois, rivers and springs were seen as living entities, and ceremonies honored them before crossing or drinking. Historians still argue whether this belief was purely spiritual or subtly ecological wisdom masked as reverence. Sky Woman is nowhere to be seen, though her presence lingers like the warmth of a hand just lifted from your shoulder. It's in the leaves' gentle rustle, in the stream's hush, in the way the air feels thicker with meaning. You and the muskrat sit for a while, listening to the island breathe. The mist around you still rolls and eddies, sometimes parting to hint at something vast beyond, other islands maybe, or the edges of this newly forming world. You gonna name this place? The muskrat asks, licking his paw. You hadn't thought about it. Do you name something you barely understand? Something that's your hesitation and grins. Smart. Names stick. Gotta be careful with them. A fringe tidbit. Among the Cherokee and Ojibwe, some lakes and hills were left unnamed in the old maps, marked only with symbols or riddles. The belief was that certain places held stories too heavy for words or names, and forcing one on them might anger what lived there. You stand and pace the island's perimeter. It's not big, but it feels enormous when you consider that it wasn't here a day ago. Or an hour, or however long you've been here. At the far end of the mossy ground, something glimmers. You crouch. A feather. Not the heron's. This one is smaller, a dull gray blue, with the faintest shimmer along its edge. As your fingers brush it, a voice murmurs in your head. Not words, but an idea. Not Benukranimers. You turn to the muskrat, but he's already watching. Found it, huh? He says. Guess somebody's trying to reach out. Who? You ask. He shrugs. Could be another diver. Could be the water itself. Could be your own head, getting clever. You hold the feather up, studying it. It feels heavier than it should, and its shaft is warm. A historical fact. Among many indigenous nations, feathers were tokens of story and power. The Lakota viewed eagle feathers as gifts of bravery. The Cherokee believed owl feathers carried secret knowledge. Some oral histories tell of feathers arriving on winds as signs, an ancestor's warning, a promise, or a message from the land. You tuck the feather behind your ear. Eyes you. All right, Featherhead. Let's test this thing. He scampers toward the water's edge and cups his tiny paws around his mouth. Yo, Whoever sent the bird, send snacks next time. His voice echoes oddly, rippling across the water. Nothing happens. For a beat. Then, a ripple in the mist. A small dark shape darts through the air, too fast to see clearly. It circles once, twice, then vanishes again. Friend or foe, you murmur. The muskrat squints. Either way, we're on someone's radar now. You can't shake the sense that the island isn't just a refuge, or a beginning. It's a signal. A beacon. A fringe tidbit. In certain Ojibwe flood stories, survivors who made new land were believed to draw attention, not just from animals and spirits, but from old beings beneath the water, ancient ones displeased at the world being rebuilt. Some tales warn that you have to earn your land's right to exist, or risk losing it to jealous waves. You sit beside the crooked tree, leaning against its rough bark. The muskrat flops next to you. You don't answer right away. So what now? The mist curls and moves. The world beyond your tiny haven waiting. Somewhere out there, other beings might be shaping their own bits of world, or watching yours, or remembering the last one that sank. But here, your little island holds. Your sapling stretches toward the unseen sun. The stream sings. And you've become something else. Not just a witness. A shaper. The muskrat's eyelids droop. You'll figure it out. We always do. You close your eyes, and for the first time in this strange place between earth and water, you let yourself rest. When you wake, or maybe just drift from one kind of awareness into another, the island feels subtly changed again. Not bigger this time, not greener or louder, but clearer, as if the mist itself has softened in places, revealing contours you hadn't noticed. The muskrat's gone, but you can hear a faint splash now and then, probably up to some kind of rodent mischief. You stretch, bones cracking in that satisfying way that suggests you've earned it. The sapling overhead has grown a fraction taller, its leaves fluttering with a faint, invisible breeze you can't quite feel on your skin. That same gray-blue feather still sits behind your ear, stubbornly refusing to fall out. A historical fact. In Iroquois belief, feathers weren't just symbols, but literal carriers of breath and voice. Warriors spoke into feathers before battle, carrying their prayers with them into the air. Some scholars debate whether this practice hints at a lost written code or purely oral tradition, a mystery still discussed in museum backrooms and anthropology forums. Your gaze drifts to the stone map Sky Woman traced, its lines now a little sharper, the cracks more distinct. They've deepened into a kind of natural roadmap, though to where or what, you couldn't say. You remember the images in the reflecting pool, the possible futures, the endless mist, the lush world, the poisoned one, and you realize that nothing about this place will stay static. It's always shifting. The muskrat appears at the edge of the stream, soaked to the whiskers, carrying what looks like a tiny, round pebble in his teeth. He drops it at your feet with a smug little grunt. Found this, he says. Didn't bite me, so it's probably safe. It's not a pebble. It's an egg, smooth, mottled, no bigger than a robin's, but it pulses faintly in your palm, as if containing a heartbeat not yet ready to be heard. A fringe tidbit. Among many indigenous traditions, eggs hold a powerful place in creation lore. The Cherokee spoke of the earth forming from a giant, floating egg cracked open by celestial beings. Some Dakota myths tell of an egg falling from the sky, hatching the first water bird, who in turn created dry land. What kind of egg is it, you ask? The muskrat shrugs. Guess we wait and see. You glance toward the mist. The air feels thicker, expectant, not threatening, not yet, but aware. I think something's watching us, you say. The muskrat smirks. Buddy, something's always watching us. That's just life. A ripple in the mist. A dark shape moves, bigger than a bird, faster than a cloud. It circles the island's edge, always just beyond clarity. You rise, cradling the egg. If this hatches into a man-eating snake, you're taking first watch. The muskrat snorts. I'll make a tiny spear. A historical fact. In many versions of the Earth Diver myth, the creatures who assist the sky person, be they muskrats, otters, or turtles, aren't just helpers. They're protectors of balance, acting as intermediaries between chaos and order. Historians still argue whether these figures were intended as literal spirit animals or metaphors for qualities humanity must nurture. The mist thickens again, low, rustling, like wind through reeds. Who tends this place? You spin, but there's no one. The muskrat bristles. Show yourself, vapor creep. The voice again, this time from the other side. Who tends this place? You hold the egg tight. I do. Silence. Then the mist parts, and a figure stands there. Not sky woman, not animal, not exactly human. Tall, with skin the color of river stones and hair like flowing reeds. Its eyes shimmer like wet obsidian, reflecting both your face and something deeper, older. I am keeper of forgotten waters, it says. And this land drinks from stolen springs. The muskrat stiffens. That's probably fine, right? You feel the island pulse underfoot. The water shivers. The sapling leans slightly toward the figure, as if listening. A fringe tidbit. In Ojibwe belief, certain beings were known to guard ancient waters, old springs, drowned lands, and submerged memories. These guardians weren't inherently good or evil, but demanded balance. Stealing, even unintentionally, from one water to feed another required offering or apology. I didn't steal anything, you say carefully. The keeper's gaze never wavers. You drew from old bones. The seed you planted was meant for sleeping soil. The stone you claimed was marked. You glance at the stone map. Then what happens now, you ask. It tilts its head. You choose. Restore what was borrowed, or accept the debt. The muskrat whispers, debt sounds bad. I vote restore. You nod. How? The keeper steps forward, extending a long-fingered hand. Give me the egg. Your instinct screams no. Not because you understand what it means, but because this small, warm thing feels like hope, and giving it up would feel like leaving a lantern unlit on a stormy night. You hesitate, and the muskrat, for once, says nothing. The mist stirs. The sapling rustles. You realize then, this is your island, your little fledgling world, your call, and it always was. You stare down at the egg in your hand, its faint thrum steady against your palm, like a second heartbeat layered over your own. The keeper's hand remains outstretched, fingers so long they seem to taper into strands of mist themselves. The island, for all its tiny size, suddenly feels too crowded. The air's gone heavy again, clinging like wet fabric against your skin. The muskrat swallows audibly beside you. No pressure, bud, but maybe don't doom us all. A historical fact for you. In several variations of the Earth Diver myth, decision points like these, choosing whether to sacrifice, surrender, or resist, are less about moral high ground and more about keeping the world's balance from slipping off its axis. Indigenous oral tradition prioritized responsibility to community and land over personal gain, and tales often punished those who clung too tightly to power or gifts they didn't earn. Historians still argue whether these moments were meant as spiritual allegory or practical survival lessons cloaked in myth. You lift your gaze to the keeper. Its expression is unreadable, like trying to decipher the surface of a wind-rippled pond. No malice. No kindness. Just the inevitable tug of a tide moving in. What happens if I give it to you, you ask. The keeper's voice is soft, but it seems to reach your bones. The debt is mended. The water remembers peace. This land fades back into mist. And if I keep it, the keeper blinks slowly, obsidian eyes glinting. The land grows, but its roots thirst for stolen springs. You carry the debt, its weight will call others. A fringe tidbit. Among the Cherokee, it was believed that carrying an unpaid debt to the natural world attracted restless spirits called Anivi Tsunsti, the little people, who would meddle in a person's life until balance was restored. Depending on the tale, they might return what was taken, or drag the offender into the woods, never to be seen again. You feel the egg's pulse quicken, as if aware of the choice. The sapling's leaves quiver without wind. The muskrat inches back. Well, he mutters, this is above my pay grade. Options. Give up the egg, and this flickering little island, your stubborn scrap of world, dissolves into nothing. A soft reset, like a dream, slipping through your fingers. Or keep it, row the land. Take the debt. The muskrat catches your eye. Look, I like breathing air. But maybe this place matters. Maybe somebody's got to carry a debt sometimes. The keeper tilts its head, waiting. A historical fact. Many indigenous cultures accepted the inevitability of certain debts to nature, to animals, to rivers, to the sky. The Iroquois held seasonal ceremonies to acknowledge what they'd taken from the land and offer thanks. Some scholars claim these rituals served to renew ecological awareness long before conservation was a formal concept. Others argue it was purely spiritual law. The debate's older than most history books. You sigh, closing your fingers around the egg. I'll keep it, you say. The keeper's eyes narrow, unreadable. Then carry it well. It steps back, dissolving into the mist like smoke and water. The fog rolls over where it stood, but no ripple disturbs the stream. No footprints mark the moss. You glance down at the egg. Its glow's brighter now, not blinding, but steady. Certain. The muskrat lets out a long breath. Okay, so, new plan. The ground under your feet shifts, not violently, but with the subtle certainty of something expanding. The sapling's branches stretch higher, tiny buds appearing at their tips. The stream's trickle strengthens, carving clearer paths through the moss. Flowers bloom in clusters, pale and wide-eyed, as if startled to exist. A fringe tidbit. In certain Ojibwe legends, it's said that land created by choice, by stubborn, debt-laden choices, grows differently. Winding rivers mark its shape. The air hums oddly. Animals appear in pairs, silent and watchful. The land isn't passive anymore. It's listening to you. Guess you're stuck with me, huh? The muskrat says, nudging your ankle. You glance toward the mist, expecting to see some new horror, some dark shape pressing closer. But nothing moves. The world holds its breath. For now, you kneel, setting the egg carefully into a small hollow of moss beside the sapling. Its pulse settles, as if relieved. A historical fact. Many ancient flood myths include eggs or seeds left behind after the waters recede, symbolic of renewal and the world's stubborn insistence on beginning again. Some historians suggest these are echoes of prehistoric post-flood agricultural rituals, offerings of grain or literal eggs buried in new soil. The muskrat peers at it. What do you think it'll hatch into? You shrug. Something this place needs, I guess. The sapling's leaves quiver again. A faint breeze stirs the mist. And somewhere in that distant, unseen sky, you imagine the shape of Sky Woman watching. Not intervening, but approving. For the first time since tumbling through that ancient sky hole, you realize this world's story isn't about where you came from. It's about what you build next. You sit back on your heels, the moss cool and damp beneath you, and for a moment, a long, lingering one, the world feels quiet. Not the uneasy silence of before, when every patch of mist felt like it hid a threat, but a hush like a held breath, as though the land itself were waiting to see what you'd do next. The egg glimmers faintly in its bed of moss. The sapling above it seems to stretch just a little taller, its leaves catching a light you still can't see. The stream murmurs to itself, its voice steadier now, less like a nervous trickle, and more like the start of a real river. Okay, the muskrat says, breaking the quiet. So now what? We start farming? Build a hut? Invent chairs? You smirk, brushing your fingers through the moss. One thing at a time. A historical fact. The Iroquois Confederacy, or Haudenosaunee, was one of the earliest known participatory democracies, long before European colonists scribbled out charters. Their great law of peace dictated how decisions were made, land was shared, and balance was maintained among the nations. Historians still argue whether early American leaders borrowed these ideas or discovered them independently, but the echoes are hard to miss. You take a deep breath. The mist has pulled back, not gone, but no longer pressing at the island's edge. The shapes beyond it stay where they are, content, perhaps, to wait. It's your world now, even if it's barely the size of a swimming pool. A soft vibration runs through the earth. Not danger, more like a heartbeat. The egg pulses in time with it, and a faint hairline crack appears along its shell. The muskrat inches closer. Whoa, it's hatching already. Should we, I don't know, boil water? I think it's fine, you murmur. A fringe tidbit. In Cherokee and Ojibwe lore, eggs at the center of creation often contained beings both sacred and strange. Animals that spoke, rivers that sang, or children born already knowing the old songs. It wasn't always clear if their arrival was a blessing or a challenge, and the stories never made it easy to tell which was which. You watch as the crack widens. The shell peels back in soft, damp fragments, revealing not a bird, not a snake. It's a small, shimmering creature, no larger than a frog. Its body is scaled like a fish, with feathery appendages at its sides and a crown of tiny, flickering lights along its spine. Its eyes are bright and ancient, and when it opens its mouth, a sound like wind through tall grass escapes. The muskrat takes a step back. Okay, that's new. The creature regards you both, then wriggles free of the last bits of shell, settling into the moss. The pulsing stops. The air goes still. You lean closer. The creature blinks. What are you? Then opens its mouth again. A word, or maybe just a sound shaped like one, drifts out. Begin. A historical fact. In many indigenous origin stories, the world wasn't made perfect or complete from the start. Creation was ongoing, a partnership between the land, its creatures, and the people who lived upon it. The myths made it clear. Surviving was just the start. Building, tending, storytelling. That was where the real work began. The muskrat stares at the little being. It talks. I don't know if I love that or hate that. You sit back, grinning despite yourself. The sapling's branches stretch overhead, and you swear you can see tiny fruit beginning to form. Pale, unripe things, but promises nonetheless. Guess it's time to build, you murmur. The muskrat sighs. Knew I should have taken that management job upstream. A fringe tidbit. There's a rare belief recorded from certain northern plains tribes that the first structures on Earth weren't houses or temples, but stories. That is, literal shapes formed by telling, stories spoken so powerfully they left marks on the land itself. Lakes shaped like ancient words, cliffs that held the silhouettes of spoken names. You gather some stones, sketching a rough circle around the egg and its new occupant. Not a wall, just a marker. A promise that this place is something now, that it will become something more. The mist watches, the muskrat nudges you, and the creature at your feet closes its eyes, content for now. Probably you agree. You glance skyward. The endless gray-blue stretches overhead, and though you can't see her, you sense Sky Woman's presence. Not hovering, not meddling, just watching, somewhere beyond the cloud-thick sky, her hand never fully off the wheel. And you realize you've become a story now too, one the mist will remember, one the streams will hum about long after. A historical fact. Anthropologists studying oral traditions among the Haudenosaunee found that stories weren't static. Details shifted, new lessons were folded in, and characters sometimes changed names or faces. The point wasn't strict accuracy, it was resonance. Relevance. Every telling had to matter to the present, or it was dust. You look at the sapling, at the egg's broken shell, at the tiny, impossible creature now curled in moss. This one matters. And there's more to build. The mist curls low around your ankles as you stand, and the soft, pulsing glow of the creature at your feet fades to a gentle warmth, like the last ember of a fire. You feel it now, the weight of this place. Not a burden, exactly. More like a coat you didn't realize you'd been carrying until it settled around your shoulders. The muskrat watches you quietly. For once, no quip, no sarcasm. Just a small, tired nod. Well, he mutters, guess you're it now. You crack a smile. I guess I am. A historical fact. Among the Iroquois and other northeastern woodlands tribes, the idea of stewardship ran deeper than mere caretaking. Leaders were expected to make decisions not for immediate gain, but for the benefit of the seventh generation yet unborn. Historians still argue whether this principle was always consistently followed, human nature being what it is, but its presence in oral tradition marks it as one of the earliest forms of long-term environmental foresight. The creature stirs again, flexing its fin-like limbs, and you realize it isn't just some random hatchling. It's a tether, a living, breathing knot in the great web that's been stretching since the moment you fell through that break in the sky. It chirps softly, a sound so light it makes the mist tremble like spun glass. The muskrat shudders. That's gonna take some getting used to. You crouch down, scooping the fragile thing up in your hands. Its scales are cool and slick, but it nuzzles into your palm like it belongs there. The moss beneath you thickens, creeping outward like it senses a boundary to fill. A fringe tidbit. In some Ojibwe and Algonquin stories, newborn creatures of the first earth were considered sacred witnesses. They'd remember the old world before it drowned, and carry pieces of those songs and winds into the new one. Some were said to grow into creatures both terrifying and beautiful. Others remained small, but vital. You whisper to it. No words, really. Just a hush meant to reassure. And in that moment, not a mist shifts upward, retreating into towering shapes of fog and vapor, revealing the barest edges of a horizon you hadn't realized was there. Rolling hills of moss and dark streams winding through a landscape half-made, half-promised. The sapling behind you hums, its leaves catching a wind no one else seems to feel. Well, look at that, the muskrat says, his voice soft. I think you got promoted. You rise, cradling the creature, and step toward the faint outline of a path where moss parts into stone. It winds into the new land, narrow and uncertain, but undeniably there. A historical fact. Early creation myths from cultures around the world often end not with triumphant perfection, but with a task unfinished. A garden to tend, a journey to begin, a pact to keep. It was never meant to be a tidy ending. The world was too wild for that. The creature chirrups again, and you glance down. Its light has settled into a steady, rhythmic pulse, the kind you can match your breathing to if you pay attention. The muskrat pads along beside you. So what's the plan, boss? Same as it's always been, you reply. We build. We remember. The land waits. The mist listens. And as you take that first step onto the new path, you realize that every story about the Earth Diver wasn't about how the world started. It was about how it kept going. A fringe tidbit. In old Haudenosaunee winter gatherings, storytellers would end their creation myths by handing a small object, a stone, a feather, a scrap of fur, to a child in the room, marking them as the next keeper of the story. The message was clear. Someone always picks it up. You tighten your grip on the egg-born creature. Someone always does. The mist grows thicker behind you now, a gentle closing of the world you've left behind. And though the shapes of trees and rivers begin to emerge ahead, their edges stay soft, like half-forgotten dreams. The moss beneath your feet cushions every step, and that constant steady hum you hadn't noticed before rises just enough to fill the quiet. The muskrat is silent now, a companion in the kind of hush that doesn't need breaking. The little creature in your hands has fallen asleep, its glow faint but sure, and you watch its chest rise and fall, a perfect rhythm that seems to slow your own heart to match. Above you the sky holds no stars, but that's okay. Not every night needs them. Some nights are made for mist and breath, and the soft, endless whisper of new ground underfoot. You feel the land breathing with you, each patch of moss, each bend of stream, learning you, adjusting to your weight, waiting to see where you'll go next. It doesn't rush you. This is a story that takes as long as it takes. You realize now, that's the point. And as the last of the old world folds behind you, leaving only this new, trembling one ahead, you let your shoulders ease. The path isn't straight. It won't be easy, but it's yours now. Yours and the muskrats, and the strange tiny creatures, and the mists too. You've become a part of it, and it will carry your story long after. Sleep well, wanderer. The world is still being made, and so are you.